This irrational exuberance is where I'm like, you know what? Sometimes, everyone, calm the fuck down. This stuff is not promised to you. Number will not always go up. It is not guaranteed to hit 100 grand, 288 grand, whatever fucking number you want. And even if it does hit $1 million, you wonder what $1 million will be worth at the time.
Hello there from Bedford. How are you all? Welcome to the What Bitcoin Did podcast, which is brought to you by the Mighty Kraken, the best place to buy, sell and trade Bitcoin. I'm your host, Peter McCormack, and today I've got an interview with Rusty Russell to discuss shit Bitcoiners say. But before that, I do have a message from my amazing show sponsors. So come on, let's talk about Casa, who are the very best in Bitcoin security, and I am a customer. I became a customer a few months ago. I knew it was time to get my Bitcoin security sorted, so I reached out to the team and they set me up with one of their multi-sig wallets, which I'm very happy with. I'm very happy that I have now protected myself from hackers, personal mistakes, in-person attacks, device failure, and so much more. And listen, it's a really good time to be thinking about your Bitcoin security. With the potential bull run coming and the price going well, you never know what your Bitcoin might be worth in a few months, certainly within a year. So it's worth getting your security in place. And with Casa, they do have a product for every Bitcoiner. So with Casa Gold, you get triple the security of a hardware wallet, and that's for only $10 a month. With Casa Platinum, you get their 3 or 5 multi-sig, which is the best protection for large Bitcoin holders, and that comes at a really great price. And with Casa Diamond, you get the full Casa offering, including a customized personal security review, inheritance planning, and of course their best-in-class security. There is no better time to upgrade your Bitcoin security and get total peace of mind. Find out more at keys.casa, which is keys.casa. Also, let's talk about sportsbet.io, who are the best place for online gaming. Now, are you enjoying the return of football? Are you watching Liverpool march on, gradually staking their claim for another Premier League title? I am. And I've also enjoyed the return of the Champions League, which I also expect Liverpool to win. Now with that and the return of the Europa League, my sponsor sportsbet.io is welcoming back the competition with a special offer for all you footy lovers. They are offering a number of missions whereby if you hit a streak during the competition, then you can earn up to 1 Bitcoin in cash prizes. Just head over to sportsbet.io/promotions to opt in and view the terms of the promotions. If you want to find out more, sportsbet.io is sportsbet.io. And also, we're going to talk about Least Authority, who came back as a sponsor on the podcast last month. And now, this is for you techies out there, those of you who are building and creating the applications. Least Authority is a security consulting company who is pushing the limits on how to build privacy-respecting solutions. They specialize in security audits, design specification reviews, and security by design. And they can help you improve the security of your wallet application, key management solution, layer 2 protocol, P2P network design, use of cryptography, and so much more. Now, if you want to boost your security strategy, well, you can arrange a no-obligation call to find out how Least Authority can help you on your next project. Just head over to their website, hit the schedule a call button, and that's at leastauthority.com, which is leastauthority.com. Okay, so onto the show today, and I am joined by Lightning developer and the man behind the account on Twitter, Shit Bitcoiners Say, one of my favorite people in Bitcoin, Rusty Russell. Now, we have been talking about this show for a while. Me and Russell have been shooting back DMs, talking about the show, and we eventually sat down and did it. And as you know, in a few of my previous episodes with the likes of Giacomo, Neil Woodfine, and Andres, I've been looking at the strict narratives around Bitcoin and toxicity. And they all made really good points, and they were all, really good shows. But at the same time, I also feel it is okay to question narratives. Some hardcore Bitcoiners hold some pretty fierce and strong views, and don't take criticism well, and that's fine. I come around to a lot of ideas eventually myself, but there are some bigger topics regarding scaling and the fee economy, and what will happen when subsidies are low. So I felt like Rusty, with his contrarian views, would be a good person to get on the show and talk about this, because he isn't afraid to call people out, especially some of the more overzealous and outlandish claims that we may see out there on Bitcoin Twitter. So in this episode, we do get into Rusty's career as an open source dev and how he found Bitcoin. We talk about scaling and the fee market. And of course, we get into some of the shit that Bitcoiners say. So I hope you enjoy this episode. If you've got any feedback, you've got any questions, you can reach out to me. My email address is hello@whatbitcoindid.com. Also, if you head over to my other show, Defiance.news, a couple of things there. Firstly, episode 6 of my series about Ghislaine Maxwell is now out. That's approaching 300,000 downloads, which is, is amazing. So definitely go and check that out. And also, my new series about Donald Trump's about to start. I'm just about to release a trailer about that. But it's not the story I set out to make. It's going down this kind of weird new journey. But, really interesting all the same. Outside of that, have a great week, and I will see you all on Friday. How are you, man? You well?
Yeah, good. I am good. It's actually the first week of school holidays here, so I spent the day with the kids, and it's nice weather, so we went for a ride and everything. They weren't all that keen about that, but I did say, hey, we'll ride to the chocolate factory, and that kind of got them out of the house, and yeah, so that was good. Yeah, good times.
What time is it there?
It is 7:30 p.m., so it's late-ish.
And you're having coffee.
I am actually having a coffee, and I would not normally do this, but I want to stay awake for this because, you throw some curveball questions in there. I'm really comfortable talking about tech stuff, right? So people want to ask me questions about Lightning or, the Bitcoin protocol and stuff like that. That's great. But, a broader ranging conversation, I want to be on the ball because it's you're always best off talking about something that's like your home ground. If you wrote some piece of software and people want to talk about it, great, easy, right? If they ask a question you can't answer, it's because it's a really good question, right? When you go outside your area of expertise, you got to start, you got to stay awake, right? Because next thing you know, there's a 30-second soundbite out of you saying that, Ethereum was like lipstick on a pig, and that's it. That's what you'll be known for, right?
So you're worried I'm going to fuck with right? you? No, this is all going in now, man. You have to fuck with you. Well, the one thing we can talk about is NFTs, because I have this weird ability to trigger people, and they think I create drama on purpose. I don't. I'll just put a thought out there, and it triggers, and then a big debate starts, and then everyone calls me a boomer and a fucking moron. But I've been dealing with NFTs, but that's. I just want to talk about the coffee because I gave up coffee. How long ago? Had I given up last time we spoke? I can't remember.
I think you'd given up alcohol. I don't know that you've given up coffee. You're doing I think that's insane. Only try to everything in moderation, right? Even moderation.
I've done 9 days now without coffee, and
wow.
I tell you the weird thing. I'm having the weirdest dreams, dude. The weirdest dreams. I had a dream the other night where I was living in this dystopian future. And I'd committed one of these future crimes. I don't know what it was, but they were going to terminate me. And I basically died. So I basically got executed in it. And I felt my body shutting down. And the moment I died in the dream, I woke up. It was so weird. I've had weird dreams since giving up coffee. So I don't know what that shit does to you.
You've talked me out of ever giving up. That's for sure.
Yeah, now I'm just having water. It's so boring. Anyway, man, we should talk Bitcoin. We should talk NFTs. We should definitely talk Lightning. Actually, let's start on Lightning. Where are we at with that? And I don't really know. But my thing with Lightning at the moment is, I always just refer back to myself. I'm very transparent about how I use Bitcoin. It pisses people off. Yeah, I don't know what an XPub is. Sorry, and I've got my security practices in place. I don't really understand privacy as much. I use Bitcoin quite casually, and I know that pisses people off, but fuck them. But my thing with Lightning is I don't have a need for it right now. So I have a need for Bitcoin, a genuine and definite need. I invoice in part Bitcoin, like I've told this before. I pay people in Bitcoin. I tip in Bitcoin. I use it, and I'm happy to use it. I like Bitcoin. I actually use it both as a store of value and a medium of exchange, and for both purposes, I like it. It works for me. I don't have a use case for Lightning right now. I have used it. People have tipped me and stuff, but and perhaps if I owed somebody actually, a couple of times I've paid people in Lightning because it's been $5 I've had to pay them for something. So it's not worth paying the on-chain transaction fee. And I have a wallet with some Lightning Bitcoin.
Yeah.
But I don't have an ongoing need. And I think that's going to be an evolving need that as Bitcoin grows and more people are using it, then perhaps I will use it more. But right now I don't have a need. So I've not been really following what's been going on. My only thing I've noticed is the bloody Ethereum guys saying, well, we've got more wrapped Bitcoin on Ethereum than there is locked up in Lightning, blah, blah, blah. And that kind of bullshit. So what's going on? Where are we at with Lightning, man?
So this is a good question. In fact, my question about Lightning was never really about the tech. Like, there are tech problems. We'll sort them out. We'll work our way through, right? But it was always like, if we build it, what happens if nobody comes, right? What if we build this great fast payment rail thing for Bitcoin, and turns out there wasn't much, maybe the store of value thing dominates. Maybe everyone's like, well, why would I spend Bitcoin? Because all I do is basically buy it and put it in my cold wallet and crack it open like a piggy bank, right? I don't actually want to pay people in Lightning. The other problem is that Lightning's different. So Lightning enables use cases that are not there today, right? So if you have a Lightning wallet, you can receive as well as send, right? Things are really asymmetric in most worlds. So if you look at like Visa, MasterCard, there's a huge difference between getting a credit card and becoming a payment provider, right? Becoming someone who can receive credit card payments. These are completely different things, right? Their whole industry is built up around helping you receive credit card payments, right? Because it's hard. On Lightning, there's no difference, right? If you can send payments, you can receive payments. It's pretty much the same, right? So the problem is now you're creating an industry for things that didn't exist before, and since they don't exist, they're not going to like jump on like, oh, great, we'll just pivot to this. So there are probably a few users that go, great, cool, then Lightning's perfect. But the real use cases for Lightning will be things that don't exist today, right? And how long will it take somebody who had that in their head, they really wanted to do something, but they couldn't? They went, no, fuck it, it's not going to work. It's just not going to work. And then they find out about Lightning and they go, oh, well, that's the missing piece, right? That's what I needed. Wow, I can build it. And then everyone goes, wow, that's awesome. And everyone starts using it, right? So you're kind of building this industry for payments, and it's got these capabilities that we haven't really had before. And society shapes itself around what it has. And so those businesses don't exist. The businesses that would allow you to tip 5 cents a minute, they simply do not exist, right? Because it doesn't make sense at the moment. Well, it does now on Lightning, but it doesn't magically create an industry overnight, right? Somebody's got to come up with a killer use case and go, oh, well, that actually makes sense now, right? So when you have a completely different style of payments, it's actually harder, right? If you just had like a PayPal clone, well, it'd be pretty easy, right? You get your business plan, you steal their customers, maybe it's cheaper, whatever it is, right? That's a straightforward path. You can see that would succeed or fail. But when you've got something that's really different, it's just weird. Like, and on the surface, it's kind of like credit card payments, but on the other hand, it's completely different. There's no credit involved. You actually receive the cash. You're holding it in your hot little hand before you give over the goods. And for some use cases, I can imagine that would be incredibly compelling. But those use cases don't exist yet because if you needed that, well, you were fucked already, right? You didn't have any way of doing it. So Lightning has this kind of bootstrap problem, right? And like any tech project, right? This stuff takes longer. The paper dropped over 5 years ago. Oh, cool, we could do this, right? But actually making it work, actually getting all the stuff in place to make it work and robust and everything else. And it's still not there, right? There's still robustness stuff that I want to see fixed and all the devs want to see fixed. There's still more privacy stuff I would like to go in. Hell, Taproot will make things, will give us a shitload more work. But, there are a whole heap of cool stuff we can do once we've got that. It'll make it more private and everything else, better on-chain footprint and everything else. So there's a whole pile of stuff that we still want to do on the tech side, but then there's this whole other side of like, who's going to actually use it, right? Recently we enabled, multi-part payments, which means that it used to be pretty much, if you want to pay $10, you were good. If you want to pay $100 on Lightning, now you are in trouble, right? Now you were struggling. That's kind of gone away recently, right? With multi-part payments, you can do a $100 payment without really a problem. So that has opened up a few new use cases. But at the $100 point, we'll just fucking use Bitcoin, right? I mean, for most people, it's like, well, that's established, right? Why would you, if the use case for Lightning is those cases where you'd make Bitcoin payments for the same amount, why bother with all the tech? Like, what's the point? So, this really, like from a technical point of view, I'm like, oh, thank God we haven't onboarded like 100 million people yet. That would be a nightmare, right? Just all the support issues. But on the other hand, so you're always like, oh, it's not ready. It's not ready, but it's never fucking ready, right? There's always something else you can do. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the question of like, who is going to end up using it? I do not have a crystal ball. I suspect there may be somewhere where the cool thing is receiving payments. The cool thing may be the ability to receive payments without permission. Everyone thinks of like, we have this, like, there are a few vendors and there's a lot of people paying, right? Because that's the way that the field is slanted at the moment. But it's not necessarily that way. And in Lightning, if you've got a Lightning node, you can receive as well as send, right? So there's no difference. So maybe the killer use case is going to be something where people are actually receiving small amounts of money. Maybe that's going to be a thing. I honestly don't know. And my previous experience with building tech is that, open tech particularly, that anyone can go and use, is what will happen is someone will use it, and either you will go, fuck, that is brilliant. Why didn't I think of that? Or you will go, that is the stupidest thing ever. No one is ever going to use that. And you will be so wrong, right? So, I know from previous experience, it's outside my skill set. I can build these things, I can make them work. We can refine them and go everything else. But if someone else is going to come in and they're going to go, hey, I've actually got the killer use case for this, and I do not know what it is, and I don't know when it'll be, right? So, we will iterate. We'll get more users. People get better with onboarding and stuff like that. And, it may just naturally grow like that. But at some point, there will either be a killer use case or there won't. We'll be going, it's been 10 years. We're still waiting, right? Maybe no one wants to stay.
The litmus test is porn. The litmus test is porn. Porn doesn't take it. You're fucked.
Nothing's porn and drugs, right? Porn and drugs, I happen to be a strong believer. I know you've had some personal experience with having to get medication that was not available otherwise. I personally feel that our drug laws are completely out of control, so I have no ethical issues with people using internet money to get their needs met or find things that they want. And you've got to be pretty robust. You've got to be pretty private in order to get that. But that tends to be bigger amounts. But maybe it doesn't have to be. Maybe you just buy weed over Lightning, right? And it's $20 or whatever. So I think these use cases are probably things that we will see. But you need a fair bit of infrastructure before you can get to that, right? You've kind of got Bitcoin already, so that's your competitor in those cases, right? Are you better than Bitcoin? And it's a smoother experience, right? So I've been working on Offers, which is like a second level invoice, which does a whole heap of cool stuff, right? It's a much more natural kind of thing, right? If you want to receive payments once a month for something, you have an offer and it does it all for you, right? And your wallet then handles requesting invoice and doing all that stuff. But from a user point of view, it's way nicer, right? And there's a whole heap of tech that has to go into that we've been slowly building. So, exactly what will make us turn the corner? I see improvements in the Lightning Network every month. We have these spec meetings. People work on fantastic stuff. Lightning Labs are doing great work. Async are doing great work. There's other teams as well producing stuff. Some of it deep tech stuff. Others, other real use cases and stuff like that. Which one will take off? God knows. Everyone talks about they want paywalls to go away. They want to pay for paywalls. And it's kind of like, but people need the main problem with Bitcoin is it's not the money you have in your pocket, right? That's the main hurdle, right? You don't have it, and for technical reasons, it needed to be its own currency. But if Satoshi Nakamoto had come up with a method of like transferring USD around the world in an uncensorable manner and everything else, that would have won. I have no doubt, right? That would have been a way easier sell.
I know what you're saying. Because I'm increasing all my subscriptions for content now because there's so many paywalls. We're a long way from someone like the New York Times going, let's just add Lightning, and we're a long way from them caring about something like this because there's so many different hurdles to go through. But the main issue is volatility. But isn't what Jack Mallers, because I haven't taken too close a look at Strike yet, but isn't that what he's kind of been doing with Strike?
Yeah, look, and you could argue it's too early, but he's definitely bridged that gap, right? Kind of going, you can accept Lightning and they can use a credit card and it all just works, right? That's amazing, And there are certain industries where I can imagine that is incredibly powerful, right? And that's the thing I find interesting is it comes back to the point about that's enabling vendors, right? That's vendors loving Lightning because they don't have to ask anyone's permission. They don't have to sign up for an account. They don't have to, talk to their bank or get a point of sale system or anything like that. They basically just accept this and away they walk, right? So joining that gap is really interesting. Whether the timing on that is right is, another question. Because in certain niches, right, that could be huge. I think what Jack is doing is great, and I'm a huge fan. But I don't know if that is that the thing that's going to make it take off? Because volatility is not really an issue for them because it's kind of, you're paying right now. So it's adjusted to whatever currency. You know,
It might be a case of just like it's a time thing. I don't think I'm alone in my Bitcoin experience in that the Bitcoin I have is like distributed in multiple places. I have my long-term cold storage, multi-sig, geographically distributed. You're not getting your hands on my Bitcoin stuff. But like I also have, a small amount like available to me, and I have a small amount in my Lightning wallet because I have I wouldn't say a daily need, but a weekly need for Bitcoin. There are things I have to have it for now. And I guess maybe over time there will just be transactions that will just be easier to do from the what I keep in my Lightning wallet. It's just going to be like, just send me a Lightning invoice. That's going to be easier. And maybe it's one of those things that will just grow over time. Is it one of those things you're all talking about? Is there any part of it that's like demotivating because it hasn't seen this take off yet? So much work's gone into it.
Peter, I'm old, right? So I didn't expect this to happen in 5 years, right? So I kind of went through this before, right, with Linux, where, it went from this crazy hippie idea that, fuck, that's not how you make software. You don't get these bunch of hippies over the internet, these bunch of failed, procrastinating students to write your operating system. That's just not how it works, right? Operating systems are written by big corporations, they're big machines and everything. Just, seriously, get real, right? That story has changed, right? Nobody bats an eyelid now. People use Linux just because it's the best tool for the job. But it took 25 years, right? It took a generation inside IT. Now you're looking at changing people's money, right? Short of a crisis that makes everyone move faster, right? That is also going to take a generation, right? Bitcoin is still this new, young, 11-year-old kid that may not be around tomorrow. It's still an experiment. And you talk to it's interesting. A dev said to me, like, a couple of weeks ago, said, it's crazy that this like beta experiment that we have is like holding billions of dollars on it. So yeah, there's,
what is the deal with Linux? I've never used. I literally never. Okay, this is probably the latest thing people will get angry about, but that I won't understand. I've never used Linux in my. I mean, I might have without knowing it, but like I was a like a Windows PC kid growing up, and now I'm a Mac guy, right? And I know that people are like, oh, but you shouldn't use that for privacy, blah blah blah. I don't care. It's like it works for me, works for my family. I've never touch Linux ever. I wouldn't even know what I'm doing. I'm sure it would be like me looking at like an Android phone. I'd look at mine and go, what? Where are the apps? Where's Word? How do I do an Excel spreadsheet?
It would literally be like looking at an Android phone because Android is actually Linux underneath, right? So, and there's a lesson here, right? Because so Linux started like 91. I was a late comer to Linux, right? I wasn't really hacking on it until 97, so 6 years in, right? And, in 97, it was like, we're going to take on Microsoft. We knew who the enemy was, right? Linux was going to take the desktop from Microsoft, right? They had like a 90+% market share. That was going to be Linux's. Of course, everyone's going to see the light. We're all going to change, right? And we knew exactly who the enemy was and what we were doing. This was very motivating. This is what we were aiming for, right? And it never happened, right? It still hasn't happened, right? Still 1% market share, right? Just above the noise floor of market share, right? We exist, and you can find people who use it, and that's about all you can say. And that's after 25 years. But all 500 of the top 500 supercomputers run Linux, right? Which we never kind of saw that coming. When Google needed a competitor to the iPhone because the smartphones were a thing, they chose Linux as their base, right? So we kind of won in these two areas that, were never on the plan. And we sucked at the area that we thought we were doing. And that's the thing I always take home from the Bitcoin experience, right? It's like everyone's sure that we're either overthrowing the government or we're defeating Visa or MasterCard, PayPal, whatever it is. And I was sure as well in the next days of what we were doing. And it turned out we built something really cool. People went and did things we didn't expect with it. And it did nothing that we expected. Just really cool stuff. Don't get me wrong. I loved Linux. I had an amazing career developing it. It was fantastic being a core Linux developer. But yeah, it was such a trip because it was never where we kind of expected to be, right? But
what is the deal with Linux? Like what? Yeah, but why do people like you love Linux? Like, what is the deal? Why is it different from, say, a Mac or a PC? Because I have no idea. I just know, like, it is like the nerd choice of PC.
Yeah, it is, because it's like it's open source, right? So it's parts exposed. So if I really need to, I can in theory dig down and figure out exactly what's going on, right? And if you're a developer, that's great. You can go as far deep into it as you want and figure out what's happening, right? And so to understand, so remember that the previous major attempt prior to Bitcoin of building open source cash, peer-to-peer cash, was DigiCash, right? And that was, the mid 90s. This is pre like Linux becoming a big thing and kind of dominating the industry as the poster child of open source and free software. So you did your proprietary thing, right? That's how you did stuff back in those days. The idea of releasing the source code so anyone could use it and anyone could host it wasn't a thing back then. So of course, David Chaum, DigiCash did this centralized thing because that's how you did stuff, right? The world has changed so much that there wasn't, fast forward 2008, of course, Satoshi Nakamoto releases as open source because that's the new reality that everyone expects stuff to be open source. They can inspect it all, right? And the poster child of the open source movement is Linux, right? Because it's all open source and you can go in and hack on it and fix it or break it and do whatever you want. So if you're a dev, that makes a huge, huge difference to you, right? You don't hit this brick wall, right? So if I'm working on Windows, I find a bug or something, I'm like, no idea. I have no idea what's going on inside, right? And if I did figure it out, I wouldn't be able to fix it. Microsoft do not appreciate you distributing your own copies of Windows, it turns out. So yeah, so that's like, as a dev, it's a no-brainer. But you can also see why that is completely unimportant to somebody who, is just an end user and doesn't care, right? Now, look, there are a whole heap of fairness and ethical issues about, hey, I think there's worrying issues about having critical software that is not accessible and transparent and viewable and that's in the hands of a single party is extremely dangerous. But it's not the kind of compelling day-to-day reason that for non-devs makes a difference, right? But yeah, so over my experience, the world shifted, right? People looked at me fucking weird when I went to work on this free hobbyist thing. And the first time I got a contract to do it full time, I didn't know if it was going to last, right? It was going to be these people actually sending me money to write software for free and release it on the internet. Like real money.
Pretty cool.
I'm like, that's pretty cool. I said, okay, well, that's cool. This will last 6 months and it'll be over, right? 20 years later, it was still going, right? Then I start working on Bitcoin and my Linux friends are like, Rusty, what the fuck are you doing? Like, seriously, is this your midlife crisis, right? You had a perfectly great Linux career as a top Linux coder. What happened, right? And the truth is
you got the Porsche, man.
Yeah, that's right. I wish. No. So from a dev point of view, I saw the same kind of story. So I changed jobs and started hacking on Bitcoin full time. I joined Blockstream because they were the only ones doing like serious, deep Bitcoin work at the time. And just after the Mt. Gox crash, right? So Bitcoin was dead. It was all, horrible, etc. But I remember Linux went through the same crash, right? Linux went through a crash in '99. It was the poster child, it was the dot-com boom. It was, this is paranoid. And everyone was announcing, like, seriously, it was all, we're doing a Linux, we're doing a Linux trial. It's going to be huge. We're going to do a Linux desktop, whatever, right? And the stock price would take a bump. Like, the stock price would go up because they make some Linux press release. It was insane, right? And everyone was doing all this stuff. And then suddenly, boom, it was over. Dot-com crash. Tumbleweeds, right? Nobody's talking about Linux anymore. It was night and day. It was amazing to see it turn around from these huge trade shows with giant things to like nothing. Nobody's doing it. It's dead. It was a fad. It's all over, right? And so I'm kind of like, yeah, but it turned out that next time the world had a crisis and was looking at stuff, Linux was ready. And I'm like, this sounds a lot like the Bitcoin story, right? So my wife said to me, I'm much nicer to live with when I'm working on something I'm passionate about. And so, yeah, I restarted my career, right? I went, cool, I'm going to be the new kid on the block. So I went to Blockstream. I'm going to like hack on Bitcoin. I'm going to be like a Bitcoin dev. This is going to be awesome. And I went across there for a month. And it happened that like a month before that, the Lightning paper dropped. And so I read it, couldn't understand it, read it again, couldn't understand it, read it with a nice glass of red wine, took notes. Finally, it figured it out, wrote a series of blog posts going, cool, okay, so here's the primer on how to understand the paper. And then Greg Maxwell, who was CTO of Blockstream at the time, at the end of my like month across in the Bay Area, said to me, oh, by the way, we think you should write a Lightning implementation. And it's kind of bait and switch, right? I'm like, I need to work with all these Bitcoiner dudes, right? I'm going to get to like I'll be the new kid. I'll work on Bitcoin and everything. And he kind of went, you should go over there.
Come on, man.
In the corner.
When Greg Maxwell tells you to do something, you do it.
Well, and also it was perfect, right? Because Joseph and Taj had written the paper, had no intention of doing anything with it, right? They were like, yeah, it's an interesting idea. And I'm like, how can you do that? You can't just like go, here you go. Yeah, you could do that, right? So no one else was going to do it. I'm like, it has to be done. And it was a greenfields project. It was like, it was perfect, right? It's a cool new tech and everything else. So that was it. That was me. I never got to be the Bitcoin core dev that I had intended to be, right? I'd even learned C++, which for reference is a fucking horrible language. But, I'd relearned it in the, on the plane on the way back to, but yeah, never happened. So yeah. So here we are. Kind of, I don't know how we got here from your question, but yeah, so Lightning. Yeah. And it's funny because I'm probably
you're on it now, man.
Lightning dev. Well, yeah, we started the spec stuff and we all met together. And by then, of course, Taj and Joseph had spun off a company to work on it, which they've since left. But Lightning Labs, fortunately, Roast Beef as now CTO was a fantastic pick, as was Elizabeth, and the two of them carried it through, and the async guys were great as well. So we all got together and we started thrashing out, okay, how are we going to interoperate? And that for me is the important bit. The software comes and goes, but standards have this way of sticking, right? You're stuck with stuff. If there are other things out there that do it a certain way, well, that's it. You're stuck, right? So you got to get that stuff right, painful as it is. So that was always my background, right? Try to interoperate, try to get a community together, try to build it. And the Lightning community is really friendly, like the dev community anyway. I don't know. It's just...
All devs are friendly, dude.
I think so. But
you never see... you never see them out there on Twitter fighting, really, like everyone else. Maybe they do parody accounts to give shit to podcasters about their sponsors.
Yeah. Well, there is that, and yeah. Also, so the shit Bitcoiners say.
We should get into that, dude.
Twitter. Let's derail this and go there. Yeah. So it got me right because people are. And I remember this back in the day from the Linux days. Like Linux was going to solve world hunger. In fact, the password on our machines, the now secret, I just checked, it's not the password anymore. On the machines of the lab was Linux will not solve world hunger, right? Which is obviously a joke, right? But there's a grain of truth in it. There were enthusiasts, shall we call them, right? Young, this is the coolest thing they've ever discovered. It's amazing. It's going to change the world, And look, I love enthusiasm, right? And I love Bitcoin too. I think it's fantastic. But you know what? It will either sell itself on its own merits or it won't. And throwing this ridiculous hopium at people is not helping anything, right? So, for example, people are like, "Oh, number go up is the best thing we have," right? That attracts people to Bitcoin. Okay, the problem with number go up, as if that is the reason you buy Bitcoin, right? You get into Bitcoin because number go up. Someone else will promise you number go up more, right? Some shitcoin will come along and go, well, number go up more. And they will, there'll be a bump. You go, well, fuck. And you'll jump on that and you'll get wrecked. And because you have no idea, right? You've only been sold a number go up. And so other number go up more, that's where you go, right? And I realized that, so devs want to attract people. Look, we want more people to in the Bitcoin space. Two reasons. One, because we like get devs, right? Some number of them will become devs or they'll build stuff that, hires devs or whatever. And part of it is you want people to find stuff useful, right? Somebody comes along and goes, cool, I found Bitcoin really useful. It works really well for this. That's the users you want, right? You want users who are like, yeah, I found your thing. It's great for this. And because those are the users who go, oh, but wouldn't it be great if you do this? And you go, oh, yeah, we could do that. Let's move in that direction, right? You can refine. Those are the users you want. If you're a trader, if you're trading shitcoins, that's not the user you want. You want the dumb money, man. You want the stupidest people you can find to come in hard and just throw all their money at it, right? Sell your kidney so you can buy more Bitcoin. That is the kind of shit you will post on Twitter, right? And that is a completely different set, right? Those people call themselves Bitcoiners, and maybe that is in the definition of Bitcoiner, but that's not what I'm not interested, right?
There is no
ecosystem
definition of Bitcoiner.
I know. Yeah.
There is no definition because people say it and then they narrow it to it. Well, you're not a Bitcoiner if you don't do A, B, and C. Or it's like, well, no, hold on. I don't like the idea of creating a definition because the definition is subjective. Like for me, you're a Bitcoiner if you hold Bitcoin. If you hold Bitcoin and attack Bitcoin, you're a Bitcoiner, but you're hostile. But not like, oh, you're a Bitcoiner only if you coin join and xpub and blah blah. I just don't like a narrowing of it. But I will throw something at you because I think it comes down to yourself, your own personal goals, incentives. So you say it's cool if there's users because you might get more devs because you want more devs. Of course you want more devs. And then you'll say a trader wants people to dump money to dump on it, and that's natural. That's a part of the trading ecosystem. But we get price discovery from that. And then I guess the people who want to take down the government want to build an army, and they say, well, each round of number go up, we get a new army of people who came for the gains but stayed for the hard money. I think what ends up happening is the aggregate is where we are. The aggregate of every person, every user, every experience just creates what we have and what we are in the ecosystem.
Yeah, absolutely. But you get to choose who do you convince, right? Who do you spend your time on, right? And somebody chasing mad gains, number go up. It's like, there are probably other places you could do that, right? There are probably other things you could do. And anyone who's trying to make price predictions and tell you, particularly short-termism, right? I think it's one thing to lay out an objective thesis as to why you think Bitcoin will go up over time. Hal Finney did it. There's a long history of people going, well, if you believe this narrative, then here's the numbers you're kind of looking at. Great. But people who are giving you a date, last time we'll ever see it below 10K, or it's going to be 100,000 in 2021 and stuff like that. Or what was one of the early ones? I was looking back through the things I retweeted, and one of them was, if Bitcoin doesn't pass 100,000 by whatever date, I will give away all my sats to people who retweet this, or something equally stupid. I'm like, just that's okay. So on public TV, which is, when you think about it, it's that's not even a thing, dude. That's not even a thing. What the fuck? McAfee's a nut job, and no one should consult him for anything. He's also a dangerous nut job, so everyone's scared to say it. But I just downvote every mention of McAfee I see everywhere in every forum, because he's not a Bitcoiner. He's not anything to do with the world that I'm in, right? And the guy just annoys me.
We'd all, but we'd all tune in to watch it.
Nope. Nope. I'll open my laptop and get some coding done.
I would.
Okay, so wait a minute. No one's ever going to. Anyway, yeah, it's stupid, right? So, but no. So the thing is that the guy who said was I'll retweet this and I'll give away sats if something, or if it goes above 100,000, I'll give away whatever, however many sats to everyone who retweets this. I'm like, hold on, that's never going to happen. This is like an intelligence test. If you retweeted that, you're an idiot, right? You have just self-selected, and I'm sure you'll get plenty of people like, oh, but it might happen. It's like, it won't happen. Your free money is not coming. And you're also, if you train people to expect free money on Twitter, right, you are not doing them any favors. History has shown this, right? So if we use this scammer-like methods to attract people, we are just going to attract people who are going to get scammed, right? It's very clear, right? They're going to get, and there are a lot of ways to get scammed in Bitcoin, right? And it's easy to say, oh, well, no real Bitcoiner would ever fall for these scams, but I'm sorry, a lot of Bitcoiners have. I got done in Mt. Gox, right? Don't keep your money on an exchange. I was trying to sell it, to be fair, right? And hey, number went up. My wife went, hey, we should sell some of that, because I'd bought some play money, right? I was like, oh, $100 worth of Bitcoin. Suddenly she's like, whoa, actually, that's worth real money now. Half of that's mine. I'm like, we should sell some. So I went to the biggest exchange in the world, and I did transfer, and I sold it, and I'm like, awesome, now to withdraw the money. And a month later, so what's happening with the money?
Man.
And then another few weeks went by, and there's rumors going around. So then I'm like, okay, fuck it. I'll just transfer it back into Bitcoin and try to get the Bitcoin back out, because the price jumped up. Never got all the Bitcoin out. The whole thing fell apart, right? But I don't think everyone should have to get wrecked to get into Bitcoin, right? I like to think that
Nope.
there is a nice way that people go, they're interested in Bitcoin. To be fair, though, the only person I know who's independently a friend of mine came up and said, I'm interested in Bitcoin. I sat down, I gave him the talk, right? Here's your hardware wallet. Remember your seed, take it off. This is a long-term investment. Think 5-10 years, right? It's going to be extremely volatile. Don't watch the price every day. If you're still convinced, then sure, put some money away that you can afford to lose. Just put it away. Come back in 5 years. Let's talk about it, right? And by the way, give me a copy of your seed. First thing he did, lost the seed phrase, right? Only found out because a month had gone by. Well, fortunately, yeah, fair enough. I had kept a copy. Here you go. Yeah, not a problem. I knew this would happen. Because a month had gone by and the price had doubled. And he wanted to sell. And I'm like, well, hey, look, it's your money. Here you go. And he sold out. But look, hey, not bad. Made a couple of $1,000. All good. Of course, the price then skyrocketed. Potentially would have made more, and also completely didn't listen to my whole long-term, think about this in your terms of years, not weeks kind of shit. Yeah. So I'm hopeless at selling Bitcoin. I'm like, no, I'm going to stick with the dev side.
Yeah. Can I tell you, I know you don't want people to get wrecked, but getting wrecked for me was the best thing that happened for me in Bitcoin in hindsight, right? Like, because I tell you, it did two things for me, right? Firstly, I've lost a fuckload of money. That's not a good thing, right? But it changed my entire attitude towards Bitcoin, shitcoins, and respect for like the Bitcoin I hold. Keep it safe. Don't spend it. Keep accumulating. Long time horizon. I had to get wrecked to learn that. Now, some people will learn that without it, but for me, it really worked. But it worked outside of just Bitcoin. It made me really think about saving for the future and what I spend money on. It really did that because, like, historically, Rusty, I'm so shit with money, man. Honestly, I spend money on all kinds of nonsense. I've nearly bankrupted myself twice from 7-figure positions. It's like, I'm a moron with money. Ever since getting wrecked in 2018, all I've done is increase my personal savings position and wealth and being very, very careful with money. I mean, I might be alone with that. Other people might do, but I'm not saying people should go out and get wrecked. It was just a really good, like, I'll look back on that in 5-10 years and go, that was the best thing that happened to me financially.
But to be fair, right, you were wrecked. You went up and down, right? You didn't go down, right? Yeah. So when Gox went under, I read a whole heap of threads that, because I was looking at working in an industry, just after Gox, I'm joining Blockstream. Like, if I'm going to be a dev looking after people's money, I forced myself to read through those fucking threads. The ones where he was doing really well, Bitcoin was up, it was all good, and he's like, even if I drop 50%, it's all good, that's great. I took my kid's college fund and I put it in to Mt. Gox. How do I tell my wife? Right? And I'm reading these people pouring their heart out on Reddit and forums because they're just fucked, man. They didn't go up and down. They just went down, right? They've lost everything at this point, right? And I think that's really...
but that's anything. Like, Rusty, you could do that. You could do that on the stock market. You can do that at casino. If you're putting your kid's college fund into anything and losing it, you're a fucking idiot.
Yeah. But the point is, he
thought... Hold on, that wasn't you, was it?
He thought no. he thought he had buffer, right? He didn't expect the whole floor to go out from underneath him. Right? He didn't expect the exchange to just vanish and take all his money, right? People are like, oh, but look, you'll get it back eventually with the settlement and shit. It's like, dude, I bet you his marriage is gone, right? He won't get that back from the Mt. Gox settlement, right? But and so I don't want to be a part of attracting people to get them wrecked. I just don't. I don't think that's ethical. I don't think it's moral. I particularly don't want to take their fucking money about it, right? It's like, look, Pete, this is going to be a life experience. I'm going to take $1 million off you, and I'm going to sow that into other scams. And trust me, you'll thank me in a couple of years' time. I think that is not really the kind of bet I want to make. And I understand that it is, the volatile positions are all part of the joy of Bitcoin. And to be fair, this whole saving thing, right? So the hodling, which is, what our grandparents used to call saving. I love that meme, right? There are some memes that really grate me the wrong way, but the whole idea that, maybe you should think about putting some more money away. And actually, it doesn't really matter whether it's into Bitcoin or, just put some fucking money away. changing that time preference is a theme that I really love about the Bitcoin community. And I agree. Thinking in those terms actually, I think it improves things across the board. It does definitely give you perspective. And look, our society encourages consumption like a shitload. And, pulling back a little bit from that, it's probably damn healthy. You don't necessarily need Bitcoin to do it, but I think, if that becomes the thing Bitcoin is known for, a saving technology, I think we've actually achieved something. But in the bull times, that's not what people are pitching, right? There's a lot of, guaranteed free money, right? Since I started the Ship Bitcoin Say account 6 months ago, every account that I follow has been asserting that we are on the edge of a bull market, man. It's all the signs, man. It's about to happen, and it's been about to happen for 6 months, and it'll be about to happen. Eventually they'll be right, I hope. But the price could go sideways for 5 years, right? It could do nothing.
Could do,
according to these guys, you've got to sell your kidney now, man. You've got to get in because it's going to be rare. It's going to be, all this stuff. And I'm like, dude, calm the fuck down. You don't know. If you knew, you'd be able to get those futures options and make even more money. And you're not doing that. And the reason you're not doing that is that you're not actually prepared to put your money where your mouth is, right? It's easy to talk shit on Twitter and produce this narrative, right? People trying to produce this narrative, like they can make a bull market by just talking about it enough. And hey, maybe that's how it happens. I don't know. I guess people are irrational, right?
Yeah, but they're only talking to other Bitcoiners. It's like a lot of what a lot of what the Twitter is about is Bitcoiners talking to Bitcoiners about Bitcoin. So they're saying something like about Bitcoin, and then a bunch of Bitcoiners are going, "Yeah, you're right," but they're not actually talking to anyone new. They're not like they're just I get it. All right, but listen, look, I'm with you on the HODL meme. I think the HODL meme is a great meme for life. It's it's a meme I can explain to my children, and it teaches them something, right? What about Bitcoin fixes this?
Oh fuck, so Bitcoin, look, it's one of those, I have a hammer, right? And I'm going to turn everything to a fucking nail, or I'm going to hit it whether it's a nail or not, right? The Bitcoin fixes this meme is like, surely it's past its use by date now. Can we just kill it, right? Can we just get it out of here? Just go, no, okay, Bitcoin fixes it is over, right? There are genuinely a couple of things that Bitcoin fixes. War is not one of them, right? Just putting it out there.
Okay, I'm going to debate this with you.
Bitcoin will stop war. So this is a libertarian talking point, right? This is the whole, but if we defund government, they won't be able to declare war. Okay, so I agree. Bitcoin-based governments will lose more wars than others, if that's what you want. Great. If that's, let's flip it around a bit, right? If you're not prepared to fund wars, you'll lose them. So, okay, maybe you want to lose more wars and go for a Bitcoin-based economy, right? But frankly, I think you'll find that everything else gets cut first, right? It tends not to be the military-industrial complex that starves in these cases, right? Eventually, yes, you'll run out of money, or whatever you do, right? You'll hyperinflate, right? With Bitcoin or without, you will eventually run out of money, and you'll have to stop. The problem is a long time before you run out of money for wars, you run out of money for everything else people care about, like social services and healthcare and all these other things that people like. So this whole, Bitcoin will prevent wars thing is hopium at best, right? I just don't think there's any direct line you can draw here. When countries were on the gold standard, actually statistically there were not less deaths in war than there are now. So I'm not quite sure where this is coming from. Other than this, we hope it's true. And I had this debate with people. They called me out because I said this. And they were like, well, you're on the edges, right?
Who called you out?
I'd have to look back through my Twitter. I think Stefan Livera actually. Oh yeah, he did. He did. Look, and all respect to Safe, I still consider him the primary comedian in this space. I have a huge respect for his work. But the
primary what?
Comedian. I think he's hilarious. I think he's brilliant. Like, just his deadpan presentation of economics is, and his critique of modern art is. He's reached a level that I couldn't hope. I'm just a dev, right? We're doing this as kind of a bit of a snarky side, right? I don't have the dedication of someone like that. So I've always been really impressed with what he does.
It's not modern art though; it's degenerate art.
Oh, sorry. Yeah,
the correct
of
term
course. Degenerate art. Yeah, economics is complicated, man. I don't understand
Well,
it.
he's completely wrong. Yeah,
So,
he's completely wrong with modern art, and I'm that's fine. But I like look, I like the libertarian argument, and I think I would like to be a libertarian. I'd like to live in a libertarian world. I just don't think there are enough people who are libertarians for it to work. If everyone was like naturally libertarian inclined, then great. But like, just humans are flawed, greedy, evil, angry, and monstrous, and we just want to fight, fuck, and steal.
look, there is a rational place to have a debate about the competence of government, the size of government, how much influence you should have, and certainly I've already referred to drugs. I believe that there are whole places the government has gone where it shouldn't have gone. It has no business, etc. And I think that's a healthy debate, right? The libertarian end of like, hey, taxation is theft kind of stuff, where it's like, it strikes me as very much the anti-vaxxer kind of argument, right? And I'm going to get a lot of shit for this because I have friends who are libertarian, but taking for granted all the infrastructure that is there, and kind of starting from in this world where all this stuff already exists, and going, I don't understand why we're paying so much taxes. I don't understand, where was this money going? If you ever work for a big organization, you understand that this shit just isn't efficient, right? I worked for IBM; it's private sector, but man, I have no idea what half those people. I have no idea what 80% of those people did. So this idea that, hey, man, the private sector would be so much more efficient. And the other thing that gets me, right, is you've got these libertarians who are also these like dietarians, right? They're these carnivores, we're being fed all this junk food and everything else. Like, hold on, that wasn't the government that did that, was it? It was the private sector feeding you all that shit, right? And giving you nutritional advice on eating McDonald's 3 times a day. Now, really? You're going to blame the government
not exactly true.
for shoving that stuff down your throat?
No, but there are government guidelines and recommendations that have come, and there's also certain, like, I'd have to go and research it, but there's like certain like policies and subsidies for farms to produce certain things, like what's the corn syrup bullshit in the US?
Yeah,
like, it's not just look, we are responsible for our own decisions, but like you can put some of it back at the blame of the government. We were told for years that red meat. Too much red meat would cause cancer, and then we were told recently, actually, no, it's okay. So, like, yeah, like, I see both sides. Look, I don't think a carnivore diet's healthy. I think
this food, like, the majority of this food people complain about is not being produced by the government. It's being produced by the private sector.
Yeah, but of course,
right. So if the government wasn't involved and there was no regulation and it was all left to the private sector, that is exactly the shit you would be eating. So you can't have both, right?
Potentially. Yeah, potentially. But you still get those guidelines and advice, right? In some ways, sometimes I'm like, okay, we should have free choice, but isn't it great that we have certain regulations around certain things? Like, for example, I watched the Nathaniel Rich, one of my favourite journalists. He works for Vanity Fair. He did an excellent piece on Quadriga. He also wrote an excellent piece that ended up becoming the film Dark Waters, which was about DuPont and then poisoning the waters.
Yeah.
And I just wonder, in a libertarian world, would they got away with that for longer? Do you get more greedy people poisoning the water because there is no regulations? And yes, look, the free market will say that the free market will develop regulations. I'm not convinced in every scenario it will.
Yeah, no.
So where's the middle ground?
Yeah. So the free market is like, oh, well, it'll come back to insurance and stuff like that. If you've ever been hostage to an insurance company, you'll realize that you've got regulation then, but you now have no recourse, right? It was like, well, you can set up your own insurance company. Yeah, good luck with that, right? For example, if you ever get on one of the banking blacklists, so there are various lists done generally by private agencies, not by the government, that indicate risk scores for people and stuff like that. It's very non-transparent. In many countries, it's not regulated at all. And it's the private sector going, cool, well, we've outsourced our risk management to this other company that has all this data. And, we'll ask them, should we give this person a bank account? And the answer comes back, no. You have no appeal over that. You have no idea why you're on the list, or you may find out that you're on the list. You don't know who put you on there and for what, right? You're just a high-risk individual, and I'm sorry, we're not prepared to offer you service at this time. Hey, libertarian, it's great that they're free to decide not to offer you that service, right? Because This is not the government after all. They have rights. They can choose who their customers are. And if, you can't get any banking services because of it, well, hey, congratulations, that's the free market, right? This stuff, there are reasons for regulations, right? Somebody said it really early on, the purpose of Bitcoin is to teach libertarians why regulations exist in the first place. And that's obviously somewhat of a joke, but, there are a reason that a lot of these regulations exist, right? And look, the crypto libertarians are very active on Twitter. I absolutely agree with you that there are good discussion points to be had amongst this, but throwing out the baby with the bathwater is always the problem, right? The idea of, we should just get rid of all the government, and that's like, have you ever thought of actually getting involved in government? If you actually really hate the way things are, you should get involved. And, maybe if you have long enough where nobody gets involved and everyone just gives up and goes away, then your government turns into a complete shit pile. But I don't really think that, then your parents should have been more active, right? They should have gotten involved and done stuff if it's too late for you. And I'm sorry for your country if that's the case. But I've always felt that if you really feel strongly about this stuff, get involved, man. Go do something.
Yeah,
move to a smaller
sometimes
country.
It's a tough conversation to have, because I try and have the conversation, because when you try and talk about, say, Bitcoin to friends, if your starting point is, look, let me talk to you about inflation, how inflation works, because a lot of people I know, they just think inflation is one of those things that we happily accept. Yeah, it's just a part of a healthy economy to have inflation. But actually, it explains to them that, especially interest rates as they are now, that you're losing purchasing power. It is essentially, I do consider it essentially a bit of a theft, right? And you can explain it to them, and then you can say, look, over 20 years, it's quite insidious that the purchasing power you'll lose. But if you wanted to, Bitcoin is scarce, so you can buy some Bitcoin, and there is a chance that if Bitcoin continues to be successful over a long-term period, you can hedge part of that. And perhaps you need to hedge a little bit with gold and blah, blah, blah. I can have that conversation, and it makes sense to people.
Yeah.
But if I sit down at the table and say, all governments are evil, everything they do is evil, you're not a free person, you're a slave to a government, taxes, theft. But with Bitcoin, if we all buy Bitcoin, we can take down the government. We won't have any governments anymore. But what we can also do is we also have gun rights, and we can all get guns, and we can all protect ourselves. And the people with the most money, we're going to live in this thing called a citadel, where we're going to have armed guards protecting it, and our own secret economy. And sometimes I want to have this conversation. Sometimes I even want to mock it. But even attempting to get into the conversation, and look, Rusty, the reason I want to have the conversation is yes, we don't have as much freedom as we would have in a libertarian society, but is there a certain amount of freedom that's worth sacrificing for a safer society? Now, look, I know they'll come out, there's that quote, what is it? Anyone who gives up whatever it is, liberty for safety, has neither. I get that argument. At the same time, we have some form of civilized society. If we went to a stateless society, would that be better? Or would the trade-offs be worse? Would we be in a situation where it's like Mad Max? I honestly and genuinely don't know, because I've never seen libertarian society. Mm-hmm. But I definitely want to have the conversation. But even attempting to have the conversation, you get people go, "You fucking statist cuck, go fuck yourself, go and suck your government's dick." It's just like, well, hold on, I'm just trying to have the conversation here. Can we just try and have the conversation? Because if the option is binary, statist cuck, or liberty, then it's very difficult to actually make progress. Sorry, I'm going on a bit here, but the reason it's important to make progress is how do we make society better? So, for example, I had a really great interview with Eric Voorhees. I always refer to. He's a great libertarian. I really appreciate his time, and he said something really important to me. He said, because I talk about the big red button to switch off the state, he said, look, could we just directionally head to a smaller state? Can we ever get to that point? Maybe we can't, and I don't know. And the other thing I don't know is that even if we have the big red button, I've talked about this before, I've been reading Maslow's hierarchy of needs and looking at the way humans are. Do we end up just rebuilding everything again because we have groups of people, and then we need governance, and then we have leaders, and we have it's a very complicated area. But I think for just to be very binary of it's either liberty or statism, and you can't try and like navigate the in between. Is really hard.
Yeah, look, and I have a huge sympathy, as I think do you, for this idea of there are places the state needs to be a lot smaller, right? And I think it's healthy to have people across that spectrum going, no, hold on, just on principle, I object to this expansion of the state because I think it's a bad idea. That doesn't mean I object to every expansion of the state, right? And it doesn't mean that I feel that everything the state does is wrong, right? And I certainly don't feel that if we threw it all out and tried to start again, that we would do better the second time, right? Because we would try to build something because we need structures in order to like manage stuff and make things work. And I know libertarians will say true libertarianism has never been tried, but it's like, because you go, well, what about Somalia, right? They have no state. You could go to Somalia, right? Oh, well, that's not real libertarianism. Well, why not, right? I mean, that's that whole big red button argument, which is very binary and not very productive. Look, there are certainly areas where the state could be smaller. I think we're headed into a world where, so I think chaotic transition is bad, right? I think that's worse, right? However bad things are, chaotic transition makes it worse, right? So if your state collapses, that's worse. Now, there's definitely an argument that says the state will always try to expand, right? And I think there's definitely a job there to push back on it, right? We look at surveillance, right? Surveillance used to be something that was selective and difficult to do and expensive and, had all these safeguards. And, in the electronic age, surveillance is cheap and can be done by anyone. And we've slipped into that mode without even really having a discussion about it. That hugely concerns me. I think privacy is really important, especially given that as I've already said, I don't believe all our laws are currently just, right? So, at what point does that become, well, am I unable to lobby against laws I don't agree with because I'm worried about the information people have on me, right? I worry about particular cases like so. Pete, when you finally give up and go into politics yourself, and it turns out that somebody approaches you with an envelope and they've got here's all your these private conversations that you've had with people. Are you going to let that influence you, or are you going to leave politics, right? That kind of backroom dealing scares the shit out of me because you wouldn't know it's happening. And there will be people who will legitimately use that power because they think it is important, right? They're like, well, we've got to get Pete's vote on this and, the defense bill and because, terrorists, a country's future is at stake. I don't like it, but we've got to use it against him. We've got to, we've got this information, we've got to use it, right? And these will be perfectly maybe not law-abiding technically, but these will be upstanding members of, the whatever service it is, GCHQ in your case, right? Who are like, hey, I don't like it, but we've got to do it. Pete's a bit of a nutter. He wants to reduce the size of the, defense industry. We've got to, just hobble him a bit, right? Just get us through this, right? And then it becomes a habit, right? That scares the shit out of me. The lack of privacy, particularly for public figures, I think is makes our democracy vulnerable. So, I understand a lot of the arguments about small government, but I don't think Bitcoin is going to fix this.
Next up, I talked to Rusty more about shit Bitcoiners say, but before that, I got a message from my absolutely amazing and wonderful sponsors. Don't skip, definitely check them out. I could not do this without my sponsors. Okay, so firstly, let's talk about Kraken, which is my favourite place for buying and selling Bitcoin. And it's the only place I use for buying and selling Bitcoin. And I know you're going to say, yeah, but Pete, they're your sponsor. I know you're going to say that. But I chose them as a sponsor. I went to Kraken and I was like, I want you to sponsor the podcast. And you know why? Because they're badass. They're so good at everything they do. Like, firstly, they are consistently rated the best and most secure cryptocurrency exchange. And security is really important to me. But they also have the best in class in customer service of the whole market. So if you have any issue, whatever it is, whoever you are, and wherever you are, if you reach out to Kraken, they're going to get that shit sorted for you. Also, if you want to be trading Bitcoin, they've got every possible tool you could want. If you head over to kraken.com, it could not be easier to sign up and start trading Bitcoin. They also have this beautiful mobile first app. So if you want to buy Bitcoin on the go, whatever you're doing, if you're at the drive-thru at McDonald's, there's a big old queue while you're waiting for your double cheeseburger and you're like, you know what, I want some more Bitcoin. You can whip out Kraken Pro and start trading. And also, with their margin trading, futures and OTC desk, they've got every option covered for you. There is no better place to trade Bitcoin. You can find out more at kraken.com, or you can download the app. It's available for the iPhone and Android. Just search for Kraken Pro, which is KrakenPro. Okay, and lastly today, but never least, is BlockFi, the future of Bitcoin and financial services, and the best company for Bitcoin financial services. They've absolutely smashed it this last few years, and they did it all without a shitcoin. Gotta love BlockFi. Now look, I am a customer. I have an interest account. I love earning interest on my Bitcoin every month, and you can too. If you sign up with BlockFi, you can earn interest on your Bitcoin. Also, if you use your Bitcoin as collateral, you can take out a USD loan, and you can fund your BlockFi account directly from your Bitcoin wallet. With the BlockFi mobile app, you can now manage your account on the go, and with my birthday this Halloween, they've got a special Halloween promotion for new customers. From now until the end of the month, you can earn up to $275 in Bitcoin when you open up a BlockFi account. All you have to do to claim this is head over to blockfi.com/Peter. Now, if you're interested in checking out BlockFi, I do always say do your own research, but then head over to blockfi.com, which is blockfi.com, add the /Peter if you want to take advantage of the promotion. Let me throw an intermediate argument for you. What if Bitcoin just has the ability to reduce the size of the state? What if it does that? What if Bitcoin has the ability, rather than doing it via lower tax income for the government? Because I had a chat recently with Giacomo and Neil Woodfine, a really great one. It was about toxicity, but we ended up getting into the state and the idea that Bitcoin is already reducing this, like it's already taken tax revenues from the state. But my argument is that it's having no noticeable effect, because even if it is, the government can just print more. The government isn't running out of any amount of money because of Bitcoin right now. Yeah. But what if Bitcoin does it something different? Rather than, what if it's an awakening for more people about privacy, and it's an awakening about savings, an awakening about the economy, and therefore we have more people who are willing to push back. So rather than it just happening via change to the money, it happens via politics, because there's enough people who are now fed up and pissed off. Like, there's certain places I've been to, Bitcoin's really easy to explain. So when I was in Argentina, Bitcoin is a lot easier to explain there than it is here.
Yep.
When I was in Venezuela, again, to certain people, Bitcoin is really easy to explain to people in Venezuela, right?
Yep.
But what if it becomes easier to explain because we start to get a better understanding of the overreach of the state, and we can just push back a bit? What if it does that?
So
that would be a positive.
That would be. I don't quite see the path to it, though, right? I mean, you've got to get people, either their currency's got to get so bad that it becomes self-evident, right, that they need something else. Now, convincing them that something else isn't the US dollar is then the question, right? So, because that's been the classic, right? I'll just stash some USD in you, whatever you can get for your local currency, and try to use that. Bitcoin's harder to use than US dollars, right? It just is. Now, maybe we're making inroads on that, right? The USD is not getting easier to use, and Bitcoin perhaps is getting easier to use, but still, right? You need an internet connection. There's more stuff that you need. You need a working phone. You need not to get doxxed or hacked or get told your Electrum node needs to upgrade and click on the wrong link and shit like this, right? All these ways that people lose money, right? So you've got to get over all that. You've got to get your education in place so people can actually look after it. And they've got to look after their seed phrases or whatever it is that they've got. But maybe you get over that, and maybe it becomes usable enough. Maybe they have Lightning or whatever, and they can do it. But I don't think it fundamentally changes the big spenders in the world, right? The USD printing still continues and everything else. Now, potentially what happens is by having a reference economy that people can look at, go, oh, well, Bitcoin's kind of going like this, and now we can see inflation, and we have an easy way to flip out of it, then maybe that puts pressure on governments to actually tighten their belts and actually stop printing money. Maybe. There's an interesting idea around there. There was always this idea that one purpose of Bitcoin could be to make governments go to a Xiaomi and eCash kind of system. So governments could have done this 20 years ago, right? They could have gone, right, here we are, we're centralized, sure, but we're going to let you anonymously transact on the internet with our currency. Here you go. They could have flipped that switch 20 years ago. Now the patents have expired. They can do it without even paying royalties, right? They could literally do that. Now there are a number of reasons they don't. And the main one is that, the money is a system of control. They've gotten addicted to the fact that they can control who uses their money now, thanks to the electronic world, right? They can control it, right? And they don't want to give that up. But maybe the needle gets pushed back. Maybe the existence of Bitcoin makes them go, hey, you know what? We could release a genuinely censorship-resistant but centralized currency, right? It turns out the Australian dollar would be a great candidate for this, but our politicians are too stupid. But if they saw the writing on the wall, countries could kind of go this direction. They're like, okay, well, they're going to be doing anonymous stuff anyway, and we might as well reap the benefit and have it in our currency, right? So maybe that becomes a thing. Maybe they get more fiscal discipline. But these are big maybes. And Bitcoin has to get a lot bigger before it can have those kind of effects, right? Gold already exists, right? So you've got to make a reason why gold wouldn't do this job, right? Why hasn't gold saved us from money printing? Other than the fact that we're printing gold, right? Because fake gold.
I guess a couple of reasons. Well, I guess because as a disparate group of Bitcoiners versus a disparate group of gold bugs, we can achieve more because it's digital.
Yep.
The digitization, if you call Bitcoin the digitization of gold, there's a lot more we can do with that. We can hide it, we can teleport it, we can do a lot more things with it. So I think that's one of the reasons we could spend it. So, like Rusty, one of the obvious and obvious answer to that is like a circular economy in Bitcoin does damage to the government over time if it's big enough. You can't really do that with gold. I can't phone you up, Rusty, and say, "Yeah, Rusty, can you build me some Linux app thing for me?" And you're like, "Yeah, it's going to cost you like 50 million sats," and I can just send it to you. If you're like, it's going to cost you like half an ounce of gold, and it's like, well, how the fuck do I get that to you? So that gives us a big difference. I think that's one of the primary differences. Plus, also, I can send it to you and nobody knows.
Right.
Ideally,
okay.
Yes, they can analyze the blockchain, but there's ways around that.
The two things you've said there are about localization, right? Because we could do this if we lived in the same village, right? If I were around the corner in Bedford, looking very, very lost, then we could do this gold exchange. We could do it privately. We could do all those things, right? Assuming I have some scales with me and I can measure it and I can check it. I don't know how you check what gold is, but hey, we'd all become experts if we had to, right?
And you can cut bits off.
Yeah, that's right. I do that, chew it, and whatever it takes, right? So we could do that. I mean, the internet, of course, allows a smaller group of people to do this because they can be spread around the world. They don't have to all be in the same place. So I get the internet argument for that. Right, critical mass is probably lower because previously you would have had a critical mass all in the same physical place to make this work. Now you can have maybe you've only got 10,000 core people, but they're distributed around the world. But that's okay because you've got the internet and it bridges that. So maybe that's a thing. But you've got on the flip side, you've got I will bet good money that gold will be worth something in 30 years. Bitcoin's only been around 11. So now you're betting on something lasting 4 times as long as it has already. That's just not a certain bet. As much as I love the technology and everything else, you look at it and you go, this is 11 years old, right? I don't let my 11, I have a 12-year-old daughter, right? Just for the record, she is not Satoshi Nakamoto. But, there's a reason she can't drive yet, right? I'm not letting her on the road, right? Bitcoin's a bit like that. Until it gets to 25, it's still early. It's still like we don't even know if this is still going to be around. Things could break horribly soon, right? So the uncertainty over that level holds it back. Now that is simply solved by time, right? If Bitcoin were 25 years old, if it were 50 years old, right? Then we wouldn't even be having this conversation about, there wouldn't even be well, of course, Bitcoin's always been around, right? You old timers remember the time before that, but then you remember the time before the internet, so fuck you, right? So we're still in that stage where it's early. By any measure, it's early, right? And a sane human being doesn't trust something that's 11 years old. Not for core infrastructure, not betting your life on, kind of, for very sensible reasons, you don't do that.
So what is Bitcoin then? Is it like so?
Oh, I like.
So
this
for
question.
you, it's digital gold? Yeah, well, no, because there's two questions. It's like, what is it, and what can it be? And I did a recent interview with Robert Breedlove, Vijay Boyapati, and Parker Lewis, who I consider, in terms of actual writing, the 3 best writers in Bitcoin, bar none. The 3 of them, excellent writers. So I wanted to get them on, and I asked them what Bitcoin is, and I actually got 3 different answers, which is cool,
Mhm.
but also fascinating. But I also then asked, we kind of went into, well, also, what can Bitcoin be? Like, that's the follow-up. Bitcoin is this, but what can it be and what can it achieve? And there is definitely sometimes a groupthink, say, on, let's call it Twitter, for example. There's a groupthink around Bitcoin that you can sometimes slide into, and I've done it myself, and then I felt like I have to step back. But there is a groupthink, and sometimes it takes maybe away from what it is or what it was. It takes people in new directions. But it's an interesting question to ask other people. Like, I have my ideas of what it is, but what is it for you?
So you use, early on with interviews, you used to ask people this, right? You'd say to them, "Hey, what do you think Bitcoin is? Define Bitcoin," kind of thing, which I thought was interesting. And for me, Bitcoin is an attempt to create an open source internet cache, right? It's a software project fundamentally, and so it always irks me a little bit to have people try to apply these huge themes to it, right? For example, people are like, "Well, it's hard money and everything else." Well, yeah, that's sort of a side effect of what it is. Obviously, Satoshi had to pick, how is this thing going to work out, right? What's the rate of issue going to be, right? And you could pull a number out of your ass. You go, well, I hit 1% a year. Like, no one will miss 1%. We could do that. But he chose a mathematically neat function of halvings that ends you up on 21 million, right? And everyone's like, oh, hard money. It's like, oh, it kind of fell out. Like, there are only a certain number of numbers you can pick, and 0 was an obvious one. Like, hey, let's pick 0% inflation. It'll eventually become 0, right? That makes some degree of sense. But this is the problem with Bitcoin, right? There are 3 Bitcoin phases, and you can tell that, and it's written in the code, right? That's the protocol insists that there are these 3 phases. The first phase was that really early on, Bitcoin was fucking useless, right? Bitcoin was not even toy money; it was just a toy. The main competition to Bitcoin when it was first released was SETI at home, right? Because you could do that. You could spend your free computing cycles and SETI at home, or you could mine some Bitcoin. At least SETI at home, you talk to other people, go, "Oh, cool, that's cool. I'm contributing for the search for, extraterrestrial intelligence." With Bitcoin, you were like, "Cool, I mined some Bitcoin." Well, now what do? First, you got to find a friend who's geeky enough, convince them to start up a Bitcoin client, and then you can send them some Bitcoin, which is doubly useless because it's completely worthless. And why did you even bother, right? So, there was this early stage when it was basically, it wasn't anything, right? So the phase one of it was like Bitcoin is completely a developer toy, right? With these grand fantasies that maybe one day it'll actually be worth something and it will become an internet money. But it was a protocol. It was a breakthrough in computer science that you could do this kind of distributed proof of work. How cool is that? Nice. It was a step forwards in the evolution of this peer-to-peer cache idea, right? Okay, great. That was like phase one. And then there's phase two, and we're in phase two now. Phase two is so original was like, the free money phase, and now we're in like Satoshi's free offer, right? The network's still being subsidized, money's still being poured in by the protocol, right? And that's the main source of funding, right? For miners and the infrastructure is all being paid for from like the free airdrop that happens in every block reward, right? That's where we are now, right? So, that's fun. It has kind of become real money. You can send it. It's actually kind of useful and things, but it's heavily subsidized, right? There's this fees in it, but they're trivial. You can pretty much ignore them, right? We're still not completely ignore them. In the first phase, you could completely ignore them. You could send you can send Bitcoin for free, whatever else, and you didn't have to worry about double spends because what? Like, is there one other guy using Bitcoin going to cheat you? Fuck that, no. So, and if they did, it wasn't worth anything anyway. So who cares, right? So we're in the second phase where we're kind of figuring things out, and there's a few things, but there's a third phase of Bitcoin. And we're not there yet. And we don't quite know when we're going to get there, probably 10 years, maybe 20 years. Every time the price doubles, it pushes back this date by 4 years. But sometime we have to pay for it. It was very, very clear. One day, this safety infrastructure that we've built, this securing of the network is going to be paid for, not by a wealth tax or the existing holders, but by people who transact. Now, this was a conscious and deliberate decision on Satoshi's part to go, no, we're not going to have an inflation tax. We're not going to do a broad-based wealth tax. We are literally going to charge people to use the network, and that is how we're going to fund it, right? Now, whether you think that's a good idea or not, whether economists will say, 1% inflation is definitely better, whatever else, he kind of had to pick a number because you couldn't, being decentralized, there's no one to choose, right? You couldn't go, well, we'll have a board of directors or whatever. Like, if you could do that, you could just you just get them to hold all the money, right? That'd be way easier. So he had to pick a number, and he chose 0 eventually, right? And that means we're going to have a third phase, right? This third phase is going to be the paying phase, pay for the piper, right? The free offer runs out. Right? The free money phase, that's the moment. This is not the natural state of Bitcoin. And this is like written there. You know exactly what's going to happen. And hell, I read the white paper. I'm a dev. I looked at it, and you can see, Satoshi said, this is what's going to happen. And so when the block size debate came about, I think the devs were kind of blindsided. Like, but look at it was there, right, all along. We were going to make this transition, man. And this is not even the final one. Like, it's going to get really hard down here, right? It's either going to succeed or fail at this point, because if it's worth it, people will pay for it. And if it's not, they won't, and it will all fail. And we don't know what will happen there, right? There's, you can make guesses, whatever, but we haven't done it yet, so we don't know, right? Now, that's pretty scary.
Yeah.
And it's almost certainly going to lead to civil war in the Bitcoin ecosystem that will make the block size wars look trivial.
Yeah, no, it's a fair point, because attempts to debate it, there's a bit of pushback.
So,
a bit of pushback on attempts to debate it, because you know what it's like? It's like, what the question is, what happens if there is not enough rewards? Like, there's not enough people paying to use the network to provide enough security for the miners?
Yep, that is a very good question, right? Now, the question... The
question, what happens?
Okay, so, and there are the absolutists who are like, no, this is what we agreed to. That's, fuck you, we'll go down with the ship. There are the ones who are like, well, okay, if it was bad enough, we would consider, hey, that was a great idea. It was an ideal. It was a good idea, but we're not going to go there. And then there are the people who are just like, well, obviously we have to do this, right? The miners, right? And you think about who, like, so let's look at 3 groups: the miners, the people doing transactions, and the hodlers. The hodlers are going to be like, fuck you. We were sold on this idea of 21 million. Everyone knows how many Bitcoin there are, right? And personally, I believe this is what, for me, makes it a trivial decision, right? Fundamentally, a lot of people bought in on this idea of 21 million coins, and to do anything else is bait and switch, right? Or pivot, as they would say, as a startup, right? It's bait and switch. It's like altcoins do this all the time. Oh, we're going to do this, and we change that. You cannot change it, right? Now, cannot is a big word, right? And what I think was so terrible that it was obviously that you had to change. But the problem is, it will never be clear how terrible it is. Like, it'll never be so obviously demonstrate. It'll be like, oh, it's not as, okay, they're not paying as much as we want. Maybe the security is not as high as we want, but it's unlikely to ever fall to 0. And the miners, of course, so the hodlers are there going, no, this was the deal. The miners will be like, free money, fuck yeah, absolutely. They will back it. They would absolutely back. Rational miners will back inflation because the money goes straight to them. Fucking A, right? And the big transacting companies will join with the miners, right? Because they're the ones paying the fees, right? On behalf of their users, their exchanges or whatever. If they're still as dominant on the network as they are today, they'll be going, we are bleeding billions of dollars to secure the network. Fuck you people. You should be paying for it. You people out there just holding your coins. We need inflation, man, so you can pay for it, right? So this causes a civil war, right, at this point. And it's not very clear to me who will win. It'll be a much more polished affair than the last one. You'll have economists come in and say, look, inflation is good, it's necessary, here's the reasons. There'll be very refined arguments as to why we obviously had to. Satoshi Nakamoto, whoever he was, huge respect, obviously wasn't an economist, didn't understand. All this will get rolled out, right? There will be a lot of push, and very polished push. The miners will be ready to go. They'll be like, they'll be on it. Now, look, that's absolutely a simplification, right? Some of the miners are big hodlers as well. Some of the miners will be well, actually, maybe it hurts the competition more than it hurts me. So, there is a range. And this is where actually I get the whole Bitcoin toxicity thing, right? If you say, no, this is my hard fucking line and I'm going down with the ship, this is a pretty good line to hold, right? Because at the end of the day, you're going, hold on. If Satoshi Nakamoto still has more than 40 coins, we definitely know he has 40 Bitcoin because he sent 10 to, he made it block 9 and sent 10 to Hal. So Satoshi has 40 Bitcoin. I don't think you can convince me that there is an ethical argument to take those 40 Bitcoin, to erode those 40 Bitcoin from Satoshi, right? Which an inflation would do. It's a broad-based tax. And so I think if the experiment fails, sorry, that's one thing, right? But deliberately taking those coins from the anonymous founder is a betrayal of trust. And so I don't think we have a choice.
Of course.
I don't think we have a choice. I don't think we can flip and become a scam. I think however worried we are, I think we have to keep going forward, right? Try to come up with something else. I do not think that we can introduce inflation.
I know,
but
with
I
you.
absolutely think
100%.
people will try, man.
Yeah, someone will. Yeah, someone will. Someone will fork it. Someone will do Bitcoin inflation, whatever. That will happen almost naturally, and almost certainly it will go the direction of Bitcoin Cash.
I don't know. So there are several pressures if you look at the big exchanges, right? One is this is coming up at some point, and I don't know when it will be. When will we cross that threshold? When will they start going, well, shit, this is costing us too much? I don't know. The miners, because miners go up and down. At some point, the miners will be bleeding, they'll be hurting. However much they might we hate the idea, but fuck, we're going to close the doors. We really need this. If things come together at the right time, there will be a big push with a lot of big players jumping on board on that. Now, maybe the first war has taught them enough, but maybe we'll have forgotten by then. Maybe it'll be 15 years' time and, it'll be old memories. No, this time it'll be different, whatever, right? And they will push for it, right? I don't know. I honestly don't know what will happen. But the other thing, of course, that worries the big exchanges is privacy, right? What if we actually become more fungible? Mm-hmm. What if, we get Taproot and signature aggregation, the idea that we can share one's signatures between a whole heap of things. And so you and I, Peter, will just, our machines will connect and we'll privately produce this kind of coin join, and we'll do it because it's cheaper. It's cheaper than both of us. So fucking everyone will be doing it. Everyone's coin joining. And suddenly the exchanges are like, what the fuck? We thought we had a handle on Bitcoin, and now, hey, you know what?
Don't know.
Let's fork the coin. Well, we want to do it for economic reasons. We want the inflation, right? We want the inflation. Let's fucking fork it, right? And take out something. It's just not take out the privacy. Simplify away some of those nasty privacy concerns that, frankly, look, Bitcoin's price is down, man, because of regulation. It's required us to Coinbase to delist Bitcoin. But if only we could remove some of these drug dealer and child pornography are the only people who use this privacy feature, and we kind of wound it back to a place we were comfortable with, then it'll be good for everyone, man. Number go up, Peter, and that's what we're here for, right? Number go up, and that's the problem with attracting number go up.
Is there any kind of ideas around when the subsidy reduces? What kind of how many halvings away do you think? Do you think we're 2 or 3 halvings away from that?
Yeah, so 10 years, another 3 halvings, right? We're kind of but how secure is the network? How much do we have to pay for the network, right? We don't know the answer to that. We really don't. Mm-hmm. There are other things that can threaten the network, but the obvious one is, hey, if I can basically spend $100 million and overwhelm the Bitcoin network, we're kind of fucked, right? Because, presumably you could make more money, fighting it than joining it, kind of thing. There is some level that's too low, but where is it? You'll find out after we've crossed it, right? After somebody fucks over Bitcoin by buying a shitload of secondhand mining equipment and doing a 51% attack that destroys whatever, then you go, okay, right, now we know it was too low. But until that moment, you can never tell. And this is always the way with altcoins, right? Until they've been attacked, how do you know they're insecure? Well, maybe nobody cares enough yet. And when they do, they do. So it's going to be really hard. Maybe you get a 51% attack. Maybe the miners do a false flag operation. They do a 51% attack. They go, shit, this is why we need to pay our miners more, right? I don't know. Maybe we get to that point. There are really hopeful signs that won't happen. Miners will still fucking struggle because miners' role in life is to struggle, right? It's a cutthroat business, right? It's horrible, man. You order all these machines because the price is up. So does everyone else in the fucking world, right? They all come online as the price dips, so their difficulty goes up. But now you've got them, so you got to run them, right? Unless they're really, really in the shitter, right? And somebody's going to run them. So the price leads, and then 6-12 months later, after the action's over, then the miners all come online, right? It's a horrible business to be in, and disclaimer, of course, Blockstream is in that business. But
you're talking about 2018 right. For me. I gave it a go and lost $500,000. It was brutal. Oh God! Do you know what I should have done? I should have flipped the S9. I bought the S9s. I should have flipped them immediately, I was buying the machines for 2,000, whatever. People were buying because I had them because you couldn't get any. People were buying them for 5,000. I should have flipped those fuckers, man. Oh, that was painful.
Yeah, but you're not the only one, right? Obviously, everyone else was going, no, these things are worth whatever, right? In retrospect, yeah. Look, like anything, if you knew the future, you could make money anywhere, right? So, look, the future is going to be interesting. I know that much. And there have been moments where the block reward from fees has been significant. So it's not completely out there that this wouldn't happen, right? But there are a whole heap of business models that no longer make sense, right? Like, no, you realize that if your job is giving free transactions to other people and paying for it, there's a shelf life on that. Right? That's going to peter out, right? And there are good and bad ways for companies to work around that. One is to just bring everything on in-house, right? Well, you can trade Bitcoin here, but you can't remove them because that costs money, right? You trade Bitcoin, right?
Yeah.
We have 22 million Bitcoin you can trade, man. So it could go either way. I think the devs are cautiously optimistic that this thing will work. But hell, again, this is part of the. It's not an unreasonable thing to worry about. And people can hand wave over whether it is or isn't. But I don't think anyone's come up with an ironclad proof, and the ironclad proof will be when we have managed it, right? And given that is 10 years away, again, we're hitting talk to me when Bitcoin's 25 years old, and then I will have a much better story about competing with gold.
Well, at least we get to see it every 4 years. We get to go through that cycle and see the impact of the drop in the block reward. And you know what? This halving, hash rate's going up.
Yeah.
Hash rate is going up. So
at
least
not
we
understand
get to
why.
see
it. The two things I don't know about are economics and marketing and all that. Actually, there's a whole shitload of things. Other than deving, I know nothing about anything. So I have no idea why, right? What's happening? Is it this lag? This irrational exuberance, right? It was like, hey, man, mining's going to be the next big thing, and people jumped into it. Historically, it's always been better just to buy on the market than it has been to mine. If you're looking at returns. So I don't quite understand what the addiction is with mining. Look, I like it, right? Blockstream went into mining. There was a big argument saying, hey, you know what? Every company should have a little bit of hash rate. Everyone in the space should be holding a little bit because it gets a lot harder to build a cartel when you've got these, lots and lots of little players, right? For all kinds of different reasons. They're not going to gather together and form, one big group, right? So I think it's great if every company out there has, and every big player has, just have a little bit of hash power on the side, right? It's particularly cool because if you never quite know how much hash rate is out there, it becomes really hard to attack because you don't know what number you need to hit, right? It's about this much hash rate. But what if there's idle hash rate sitting there? What if people are underpowering their miners to save power because it's not quite economical? But if Bitcoin were under attack, they were going to ramp it up, and suddenly you're facing 50% more hash power than you expected. That'd be a pretty cool scenario because that uncertainty makes it harder for an attacker, right? And people are doing pretty innovative things with mining off waste gases and stuff like this. It's like, hey, more diversity in the ecosystem is critical. Obviously, the more we have of that, the better, right? But it's really fucking hard to be decentralized. It's really fucking hard, right? You have to have. You're not decentralized if a handful of players control most of the currency, because it doesn't matter what you do, they could dump it, they could fork it, whatever else. And sure, you don't have to. You can run your own node, but if you have no one to trade with, you're wiped out anyway, right? I mean, if it's no longer services and money, you've lost, right? So you can't have too much user concentration. You can't have too much developer concentration. If there's only one person who understands the code, right? Well, who's reviewing what the fuck they're doing, right? And if they get hit by a bus, even if they, it turns out they weren't actually trying to scam you, which, by the way, they were. But if they get hit by a bus, you're still in the same situation. Like, what the fuck, right? Someone discovers a vulnerability, but there's no one to report it to, and it all goes straight to shit, right? So you need a huge diversity of devs. You need them all watching each other. You need a huge amount of – one of the most important efforts in Bitcoin recently has been trying to bring people up on being a Bitcoin core dev. If you're a developer, come along, figure out how it works so you can find out mistakes, bring your ideas, and just there should be as many people as possible watching this. And people come up through the ranks and even reading the documentation and checking stuff and stuff like this. Do all that stuff. That's really important. And then the mining side. Everyone, mining is obvious. 51% attack is a deep problem. But, then there were mining pools and shit. Well, mining pools actually get to choose which transactions. So, yeah, we haven't got 51% of miners, but we've got mining pools that control half of it, right? And they've been dicks in the past, right? We've seen, let's just say that there are some people in this ecosystem who are ethically flexible, I would say. And part of that is that Bitcoin for a long time wasn't considered money, right? It's kind of like it's play money. It's a token, right? The same reason that casinos give you chips because they don't feel like real money. And so to some extent, I think scamming people with them were like, well, I'm not taking real money. And when people got scammed, they were kind of like, well, it's not real money. That's why people send like 1/8 to get 2 and whatever, because they don't think of it as money. You wouldn't do that with money, right? You're not going to send someone $100 in the mail and expect to get 200 back. You're just not going to, because money actually matters. But if you think of it as play tokens still, I mean, like there's this idiot who like went up like $1 million and back down again, right? Because it's
Fuck
not
off.
real money.
You're right. I know you can go fuck yourself, but you are right as well. You are. You're absolutely right. I did that because it didn't seem real, and it felt like it would go up more and more.
Yeah,
such a moron when I look back.
I did. Look, I cannot throw stones. As I said, I got goxed. And this. So coming back to shit Bitcoiners say, this irrational exuberance is where I'm like, you know what? Sometimes everyone calm the fuck down. This stuff is not promised to you. Number will not always go up. It is not guaranteed to hit 100 grand, 288 grand, whatever fucking number you want. And even if it does hit $1 million, you wonder what $1 million will be worth at the time, right? So, when you think it'll stop wars or everything else, or just realize that every time there are side effects that you didn't intend as well, right? So my latest tweet was literally Pierre tweets, and I want to quote him exactly here because I wouldn't want to do him a disservice. That's right. Bitcoin accumulation might create more wealth than you expect, and I'm like, Bitcoin accumulation might lose you more than you expect because both of these statements are true. Oh, but man, did I get shit for mine, right? I'm like, look, you should be thinking about what if I get.
Did you? Right, I'm going to look that up.
Oh yeah, my latest tweet. Look at all these risks. If you're not seriously, you should not be promoting this stuff without telling people, hey, by the way, here's your steps, right? Don't get screwed on altcoins. Don't go into DeFi because it's offering you 3,000% a day interest or whatever, right? Don't, here are the things to avoid, right? And, if you're not hammering that message home, who are you trying to attract, right?
Right. Okay, so I've got that tweet open. Yeah. So the first reply is Udi, and Udi's great. Like, Udi's practical and realistic. He's a Bitcoiner. He thinks shitcoins are shitcoins, but he'll say realistic things. Like, most of these things shouldn't happen to most people. However, realistically, Bitcoin's value might drop over time. He is right. Pierre replied, personal experience of yours, blah, blah, blah. Shit I've gone through. That's good, Vlad. God, there's just so many people on here have blocked me. Oh, cry, boo-hoo. Hi, look, you weren't given that hard a time, or does it get worse down the bottom? Usually it's the bottom where you click on the see more replies there, or they're like, fuck you, wanker.
Yeah, but and some people were like, yeah, look, I totally get it. People are like, yeah, that you have to be aware of this. Like, that is the entire point, right? I don't want this. This is the thing. People are determined to build this number go up. It's all good narrative, and I'm like, whoa. There are still issues here, right? For a dev, the most important thing, like, look, I love this stuff. I want to believe it, right? This is what I'm fighting against. I love the idea that Bitcoin's going to go fucking to the moon. I'm going to be driving more Lambos than I can count, whatever, right? But as a dev, I've got to focus on the issues, right? The problem is that Bitcoin has things that need fixing, right? There's stuff we can do better, that we need to do better, right? I've got a list as long as my arm of stuff, that just work on Lightning. And there's, all these Bitcoin improvements that would be great to happen. And, hell, it would be better if it was easier for newbies. And damn, it should be a lot easier to back up a wallet than it is. And, and scanning QR codes is a pain in the ass. And, all this stuff, right? as a dev, this is the stuff you think about. Like, let's try to fix some stuff. And this wild hopium of going, man, all I've got to do is sit back and hodl, and someone's going to build a citadel around me, right? I'm like, dude, if that's your aim in life, is to basically do nothing and build up this elaborate construction that lets you convince yourself that is the most valuable thing you can do, I'm not really interested, right? I like people who want to build stuff, who are actually trying to help and build things. Not people who are basically going to, I just have to sit back and Bitcoin's going to go to like $1 million. Well, hey, maybe it will.
But that's not popular, man.
You're not helping.
You got to join the hype machine.
It's only interesting to me if it attracts people who actually want to contribute. Build something, they build a business on it, or they start using it, or they find some cool new thing to do with it. That's awesome. That's exciting. That's the shit I want to hear on Twitter, right? Just continually trying to like throw variants of memes to try to A/B test and find out the perfect meme to push this, to break into mainstream. And for most people, breaking into mainstream does not mean a lot of people understand the fundamentals of Bitcoin and start to worry about deflation and all this stuff. And they're not thinking, oh, well, I really wish people had a more nuanced view of the Fed, right? That's not what they're talking about. Mainstream is like, literally, I want more people to dump more money into Bitcoin. And when I talk about Bitcoin, I'm never talking about the price, And full disclosure here, Blockstream pay me a bonus in Bitcoin, so I do hold some Bitcoin. So number going up is great for me, but it's not what gets me up in the morning. It's not what makes me excited about Bitcoin. It's about this technology and the fact that we can use it for enhanced privacy and to make some really interesting things. It's not even the monetary side of it. It's the fact that we can do things with Bitcoin that we couldn't do before. And we can get some stuff back that we used to be able to do with cash, right? We can get that back again with Bitcoin if we get this right. But there's still a lot to go, right? There's still shit. We shouldn't have to be explaining XPubs to people, right? I didn't know what an XPub was 2 years ago. It's an obscure bit of wallet software, and I've written a wallet, right? So, if people have to know what an XPub is, we've lost.
Well, that was my view. It seemed to upset a few people. I don't know. I have a way of upsetting a few people, but I just like to put pointed questions out there.
Yep.
But that one wasn't. That was just a conversation on Twitter, and somebody mentioned XPub. I was like, oh, what's that? I'd never heard of it. I mean, I think I'd heard of it. I didn't know what it was. And then, we have a week of people shouting, yelling, like complaining. Well, you shouldn't be a Bitcoin podcast if you don't know what an XPub is. No, actually, this is the exact reason I should be a Bitcoin podcaster. This is the exact reason I should be, and the exact reason you aren't, because you're going to go on there and you're going to talk about this shit like everyone knows it and expect it, and you've got no idea that most people don't care. Haven't got the skills, and then it upsets other people. They're like, well, you're anti-intellect. I'm not anti-intellect. I'm just saying I know what people are like. I know how humans behave. No. I was a UX designer. I understand how people are, but it just gets into all that stuff, blah blah blah.
Oh, look. My friend who lost their passphrase and sold a month later has a PhD, right? He's not dumb. Right? And this is the thing. People are not, they're busy, right? They have other shit going on. However smart they are, right? They're not going to drop everything and go down the rabbit hole before they invest or, figure out exactly how to set up their 28-way multi-sig, right? Which is where I think, services like Casa, which, obviously is a sponsor of your podcast, are great, right? This idea of, hell.
Well, I do always openly declare and admit they're a sponsor of mine, especially if I'm tweeting about it, because you never know when shit Bitcoiners say might. It's actually, do you know what? It's funny. So I didn't realize shit Bitcoiners say was you at first. I just hadn't made the association with the pictures. And then when we agreed we were going to do this, I went through it, and I was like, and I was going through those like, you've picked on him. I was like, oh fuck, there I am. I was like, hold on, you've called me out. I have declared this. Yep. And I think you had to admit it below. Yeah, it's the only one where I think you kind of apologized.
Yeah, absolutely. Your second tweet, you mentioned it. I hit the first tweet. I'm like, fucking, it's a no. And this is an issue, right? So I think because we're in an industry, and I use that in like finger quotes, because I think, there's a whole heap of, there's Bitcoin, and there's a whole heap of other shit that wants to be Bitcoin and uses and tries to blur the lines as much as possible. And for me, there's this Bitcoin industry, and there's this kind of surrounding industry that's of questionable value. But because I think there is so much unethical shit in this, I always, every time I talk about Bitcoin, I stand up and say, by the way, I own Bitcoin. I have a significant stake in Bitcoin because of, historical accident that Blockstream insisted on paying me in Bitcoin. Of course, I said, no, I keep your funny internet money. I'm nervous enough going to work for a startup again for the first time in 20 years after I joined a startup in 1999, just before like the end of the dot-com boom last time. And I was like, I'm never fucking doing that again. It was a stupid decision ever. So when my wife, and I totally credit her, said, no, you should do it. Go for it. Like, we can pay off the house eventually. You can go run away and join a startup again and leave your perfectly good, solid job and go play with your funny money. And she was absolutely supportive of that, which is amazing. But they said to me, so what's your risk appetite like, Rusty? How much of your salary do you want in Bitcoin? And I'm like, whoa, crazy internet dudes. No, I'll take your fucking money, thank you. I'll take your dirty USD and I will just spend that on my kids and mortgage. And you keep your. And they said, look, we have a policy of like a minimum, right? So I took like the absolute minimum, which in retrospect, of course, was the most foolish financial decision I have ever made. I should have done the opposite and go, no, give me all.
Yeah, but you
Bitcoin,
want to know,
right? That's right. So, but either way, I now hold Bitcoin, and that's great. It built into a nice little bonus. It's fantastic, and but it's important to declare these things. You should declare your interests up front, because I think there are so many people out there who don't. People obviously shilling stuff, that they have undisclosed interests in, and they're getting paid to shill and all this shit. I mean, it is completely a wild west out there. So I think you kind of have to go the other way and be incredibly explicit, and literally my employment depends on Bitcoin, right? Somewhat my reputation depends on Bitcoin. The last 5 years I've spent developing Lightning. If this Bitcoin thing fails, that's blown, right? I have basically gone shit. Now then I'm a 47-year-old programmer looking for work. That is not a good picture. There is like rampant ageism in the industry. No. And I'm like, whoa, okay, old guy who was on the failing technology team, yeah, sure, we'll hire you. I'll probably get paid slightly more than the janitor if I'm lucky, right? So, so I'm invested in Bitcoin in a way that
I wouldn't hire you.
You see, that's right. I'm an asshole on Twitter. You should never hire me.
I would hire you. I don't want some old dude.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. It's hilarious because this is the first job I have ever willingly gotten up at 5:30 in the morning to attend. Like for the last 5 years. So the spec calls, we have these spec meetings for Lightning, and they're at 5:30 a.m. Adelaide time, which pisses everyone off because daylight saving happens and everyone's like, oh shit. So all these Lightning devs know about obscure facts about daylight saving time in Australia. But I hate fucking getting up in the morning. But I do it for this. I will do it for Lightning because I love this stuff. And it's so exciting. I remember Adam Bax saying to me once, like, can't sleep because Bitcoin. It's like this stuff can just take over your brain, right? And so,
dude, it does.
Yeah, and it's fascinating. And there's all this stuff, so I don't consider myself an OG, right? But you get to hang around some of them sometimes, and the real, OGs, and yeah, it's fascinating the perspectives they have, and some of the way they discuss things. And there's an informal Blockstream rule, for example, not to speculate on the identity of Satoshi Nakamoto, and I was like, oh, that's a bit. I wonder why that is. It's kind of gauche, but there's some really good reasons to do it. One is that you look like a dick. There's no good way to do it, right? So it's gauche, right? But secondly, like, hold on, if you pretended to care about privacy technology and stuff, this whole privacy idea that you should have privacy, probably should put your money where your mouth is and not actually actively speculate on trying to dox the guy who founded the currency, right? And it's probably not where you should go. And thirdly, like, it's just, if you realistically spread the idea that someone is Satoshi Nakamoto, you're dropping a whole pile of shit on them, right?
You might get them killed.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, God knows what will happen, and it's just grossly irresponsible. And I feel among the OGs, there's almost I think there's another reason, and I think that's because maybe I shouldn't say this. I don't know, but in the back of your mind, you've got to be thinking, well, maybe it's one of my friends. Yeah, probably not. It's probably not, but maybe. It's like, maybe I don't want to poke this bear because maybe it turns out, shit, it was that other dude all along, right? So I think some of the OGs are like, well, look, actually, we don't look into this too much because it could turn out like, wait a minute, I recognize that. Shit, that was you all along. Peter McCormack with Satoshi Nakamoto. Fuck, never picked it.
Dude, it was, man. It was always me all along. No, but I agree. Look, like the whole speculation is nonsense. Like, just get away from it. I wrote I don't write often, but I wrote an article once. I said it doesn't actually matter. Like, he left. He might still be in the project as somebody else, but as Satoshi, he left. He abandoned the project to do something else. He's left it for everyone else. It really pisses me off when people say, "Well, Satoshi." You don't know what Satoshi would have thought or what he thinks. Just shut up. Like, be man enough to stand by your own words and what you think, and don't try and use somebody else's. It's like these interpretations of the white paper, which, by the way, I think both ways are actually a little bit disingenuous. So, firstly, I think it's disingenuous to say what Roger Ver does, to say it has to be cash, therefore it has to be like physical money all the time. I also think it's disingenuous to say it's the complete opposite, because in pretty much the opening paragraph, it talks about using it for online commerce. Like, if it's talking about for online commerce, then it has to be thought of in that way. I just think bury it, forget the white paper, like read it for contextual purposes, but don't use it for any evidence-backed argument. Make your arguments based on what happens now. And also, look, things evolve. Like, who knows what Satoshi would think of it now? He might think, you know what, this has evolved to something else and it's really cool. It's really cool what it has been. Or he might hate it. Nobody knows. So shut the fuck up.
So the only caveat to this that I think has relevance, where you can quote the white paper without, is that if people today bought in because of stuff they read in the white paper, right, then that has validity, right? If people went, but I read the white paper and it said Bitcoin was this, so I got involved because it said there would only be 21 million. There would be a fixed cap. It doesn't say 21 million. It says there'll be a fixed cap and it will transition to fees.
Yeah.
Then you go, okay, cool. Well, that is legitimately something that was a promise made that people bought into. So changing that is a bait and switch, and we shouldn't do it, right?
I agree.
And this is the thing about Bitcoin. It's kind of finished. Like look, there are refinements and stuff, but it basically is going to be the same thing it is in 20 years. Maybe we get some new privacy tech, maybe we get some cool tweaks, but fundamentally, this is what it is. Maybe we even changed, the hashing function or other technical changes, but basically, it is what it is. We might get cool new scripting or whatever else, and we might build other stuff, cool stuff on top for sure that doesn't exist. But fundamentally, you can judge it based on what it is, and it will succeed or fail on. He kind of presented this. Here's a paper, and here's an implementation, and that's it. And it's been tweaked since then. But there's been no massive remodel. The shift has been in the world, right? Obviously, we've gone from stage 1 to stage 2. We're going to stage 3. But, it's been this kind of constant. And so you can evaluate it, which is kind of nice. You can look at it and go, well, maybe it'll be slightly better. And I'm a big blocker, right? I think we're going to have to increase the block size at some point.
What?
I think it is. Yeah, I know.
Dude.
Hey,
all right, no, come on. Explain your thesis on this. Explain your thesis on this. What you're a long-term big blocker, or you think right now we should do something? Like, because I think there's a difference. There is like, I believe right now, like Roger Ver, there needs to be cash. We need lower fees. There's that kind of big blocker, or there's a big blocker that says, look, I expect at some point in the next 10, 15 years, we might need an increase in the block size. Because I think, I could be wrong, but I even think someone like Pierre has said at some point he thinks that needs to happen. They're two different. Yeah, it's two different mindsets.
Yeah. So okay, there's one thing. Yes, I think in the long term we have to increase the block size somehow. And then we had a bump with SegWit. We kind of we put some stuff into an appendix, and we said, the classic thing, like when you're a college student and you've got like you write 1,000 words and you're like, shit, I can't fit it all. You put it in an appendix, right? That is exactly what SegWit is. We shove this stuff in an appendix. That trick only really works once, and there's a limit on how much. We said, okay, you only have 4,000 words in the appendix, right? That was very simple. Now, we could add another appendix and put stuff, but the obvious stuff is already there. We'd rip some more stuff out. We could do some dodgy shit, but basically at this point, you want more room, we kind of need a hard fork, right? So if we want more room, and I think we will want more room. I think things are improving to the point where we can probably do a modest increase over time. And the thing is that if we increase, we can always decrease, right? We can always have mechanisms to drop it because that's compatible, but we can't increase without a hard fork, right? Now, we've never had a hard fork before. This is the other thing. It's going to take years, man. everyone has to upgrade, and I mean like everyone. That's a 5-year process, right? That you have to first.
Right.
Everyone has to talk about it. We have to figure out what are our options, decide on our options, implement it, see if everyone's got buy-in, and move in these baby steps. Okay, so I think everyone agrees on this. Okay, now we can deploy it. Now we can look at it. Now it's going to kick in. And then, right, now the clock's ticking, and we're committed, and in 2 years' time, everyone better upgrade their software or else, right? This is a long fucking process. And what annoys me about the block size debate is it poisoned the well for this. You can't have this debate without getting really emotive about, oh, but you're trying to, I'm like, no. If we're going to do this, it's going to take a long time. It has to be done really carefully. We need numbers, right? What is happening to global internet rates? Like how, and the numbers on that are all shit. I've tried to do it, and it's like, what percentage per year? What can you count on in the future? What are the other critical parameters, right? The bigger the blocks are, then the more shit you've got to remember because the more stuff you can jam in there. And yeah, there are tricks that might be happening with UTXO and other stuff that maybe gets around that. There's a lot of stuff has to be decided before we even come up with a number. And then we come up with a number, okay, we think this is reasonable. And then you get everyone to agree on the number. And then you got to, this is a big, long process. And we can't start it until kind of the wounds have healed from the whole, no fucking way, kind of large blocks, you big blocker, whatever, right? We're still not there yet. We can't have a civilized discussion, it seems.
Well, there's a couple of points I'd want to make on that. If you accept that at some point you have to raise the block size, I think you're accepting the fact that you're always going to be looking at raising the block size. So you might have to raise it in 10 years. But then potentially you might have to do it again another decade. Well, you're shaking your head, but like potentially you might.
No.
So you're thinking put in a way for it to linear growth.
Yeah. You've got to have some formula, and we get to do this once. Now, I'm sympathetic with the idea that no, fuck it. It's too dangerous to change any of the rules in Bitcoin. And we should be headed towards a world where it doesn't no soft forks, no nothing, it never changes, right? Now, we wanted to let it as long as possible because there's cool stuff we can do, right? But at some point, it becomes too dangerous. At some point, you go, no, it's too big, it's too important, it'll get too political because we're humans, and we're not going to be able to change it. So if we can't change it in the next 10 years, maybe we can't change it. Maybe we're stuck with it. Right, so there is a window on the other side where it's too long.
But the other thing I say is there a risk?
Don't try doing it in the middle of a civil war, by the way. Don't try doing it in the middle of the whole having at the same time. That would suck too.
But is there a risk of a minor bait and switch? Says they're on board, the date hits, everyone upgrades, but I don't know, a miner carries on mining the old chain, ends up mining a bunch, solving a bunch of blocks, and then a bunch of people are like, oh shit, I want to stay on the old chain. That to me sounds like one of the biggest risks.
Yep, and that's why you need such a long. You need everyone in the universe to know this is happening, right? You really need 5 years. It's going to take okay, even once you've decided everything, you've fractured all that, blah blah blah, and it's all deployed and everything else. Then this timer starts ticking. Right now, it's got to be 2 years. From you can download any software you've done from today for the next 2 years will be compatible. Anything older than that will get forked off. It will literally take at least that long. It will have to be literally, if you didn't do anything, you probably upgraded the last 2 years, so fuck, right? You're all good. But the thing is, there will be a fork, and this is the one thing we learned from Ethereum, is that if there can be a fork, there will be a fork, even if there isn't actually any good reason to fork. The exchanges make a shitload of money on forks. So they will have a fork. They'll keep the fork alive. They will keep the old fork alive. There's money to be made here, man. So, there will be a consortium who will continue the original fork, not for any kind of, blah, blah, whatever reasons, although I'm sure they'll spin it, but simply because forks mean trade, right? And trade means money for exchanges, right? They don't care who's wins and loses, right? So there is actually a whole ecosystem here that are incentivized to promote a fork. So even if it were completely consensual and basically the only people who didn't upgrade were that one guy who forgot and had his machine locked in a basement for 2 years and he gets forked off the network or whatever. Even so, right? Because originally there was this idea that we could make the old fork do it in such a convoluted way that the old fork would never have any transactions in it anymore. So you couldn't accidentally be left behind. But I think these days we've accepted that there will be people who want to fork, and so you have to let them, right? If you didn't think anyone wanted to be on the old fork,
and you can kill off the old chain.
Well, if you were convinced that nobody actually, the only people on the old fork were there accidentally, then there's an ethical thing to say, yeah, we should nuke the old fork, make it so that that can never be continued in some way. I don't think you can make that argument now. There will be people, you may disagree with their reasons, but they will want to fork the coin. They'll want to be on the old fork so they can trade and all that stuff. So therefore, you have to let them. You cannot nuke the old one. This is actually one of the core devs made this argument. I think it's valid. We've learned that. Originally, people were leaning towards this whole idea of nuking the old one so that it was unusable. So if you were left there by accident, you couldn't have, you wouldn't see blocks being made with any transactions in it. It would look like empty blocks, right? So like it would stop. But I don't think you can do that anymore because I think it's very clear that there will be people who actually want to be on the fork. And who are you to say that they can't do it? So we won't be doing it that way. But yeah, these are the kind of things that need to be discussed calmly and rationally like adult human beings. And we're not there yet. We're still hurting.
Well, you can even have it as a calm conversation initially, but like if you ever get to the point where it looks like it might happen and there's people who disagree, it won't be calm. It will be warring. It will be war again. So I don't think we'll ever see a hard fork unless it's one out of necessity because of some unique problem within the protocol. But I'm not a dev. I just don't see a hard fork come in. If it does happen, I see two chains. And which is which, and that becomes that whole, it's like the privacy issue that could become another civil war. But topic for another day, man. Listen, look, we've rattled through 2 hours here without even trying.
Wow, good
effort, man.
Wow,
I know, dude.
And we didn't even talk anything useful. I think it was all mainly shit. I mean, it was mainly
I did
calm, nuanced, intellectual discussion between two people who have no idea what they're talking about.
Bitcoin to say, man.
Absolutely.
Well, listen,
Ross.
I do want to say thank you. People won't know that, like, privately, you've been messaging me for quite a long time. I know you've followed the show for a long time. Bits of advice here or there. So I do want to say thanks for that. That's really appreciated. And it's sad that it's taken this long to get you on. I did want to do it in person because I used to do all of mine in person. I'd never been to Australia, and I thought that's where it would happen. But here we are in lockdown world, and that's the way we had to do it. But look, thanks. Man.
Yeah, when we get to the other side of this, you absolutely need to come visit. It'll be fantastic. We'll do this in person with beer because that's how I think. The fuzzy discussions around Bitcoin, I prefer to be drunk or at least slightly, somewhere there, right? Just with a beer in hand, it's always just better. You can follow me on Twitter. You should follow me at Rusty_twit. You can Google me. I'm findable all over the place. I work for Blockstream. On Lightning, and you can also follow at Say Bitcoiners, which is shit Bitcoiners say. But that's only really if you feel you need some kind of insulin shot against the straight glucose that you're being drip fed from crypto Twitter about how Bitcoin is going straight to your citadel or whatever the fuck it's talking about.
Wicked, man. Listen, glad to do this. Love talking to you. This is a great episode, man. Stay in touch, and good luck with everything, bro.
You too. Thanks, Peter.
All right, what did you make of that one? Now, listen, look, I love Rusty, and he holds some opinions that are definitely not popular amongst some Bitcoiners and will probably ruffle some feathers. But this is exactly why I wanted him on the show. I want people to be able to come on the show and talk about anything. And I think it's important to have all types of hard conversations, whether it's discussing toxicity in Bitcoin, but also discussing some of the more, contentious topics. I think all of them are important. We all learn from them, and it doesn't really hurt Bitcoin by having those conversations. So I hope you enjoyed this. Anyway, big thanks to Rusty for coming on the show. He would definitely be back on in the future. If you do want to get in touch with me, you can reach out to me. My email address is hello@whatbitcoindid.com. I do reply to anyone, well, unless you send me some nonsense, but I do reply to anyone, so do feel free to reach out to me. Outside of that, just loving the fact that people have been listening to the show and giving me reviews on iTunes. If you do have time, it takes 2 minutes, but that really helps with the show listings. So if you can do that, thank you very much. Hopefully you think it deserves 5-star. Also, on my other show, Defiance, which is defiance.news, episode 6 about Ghislaine Maxwell is out. And next week, I'm going to be starting my new series about Trump. I hope you enjoy that. Hopefully you will see the path I'm taking on that story. It's going to be a bit different from what I expected to do. But yes, that's coming out soon. Trailer is out today. Outside of that, have a great week, and I will see you all soon.